Good morning, everyone. I will now convene this meeting, regular meeting of the Board of Lane County Commissioners. It is Tuesday, August 6th. Yes, August. We have a few items on our agenda this morning, including a 10 a.m. time certain, so we may do a little adjusting on the fly. But other than that, as we get there, are there any other adjustments to the agenda as presented?
Not that I'm aware of.
To the Commission? Any emergency business this morning from our Administrator? Thank you. Then we will move right into one of the, I think, all of our favorite things to do, which is an employee recognition. And we're going to take a few minutes to recognize folks from our animal services work, and I will turn it over to our Administrator, Greg Rickoff, to introduce staff and walk us through this item.
All right, and I'm being joined by John Roche, Fleet Services Manager, and who's AIC for General Services Manager. I apologize while I read this. We're recognizing this morning Rachel Goss, Michael Johns, Stacy Manning, Isabel Merritt, Colton Mobley, and Crystal Windheim. Lane County Animal Services removed several animals from the property near Dorena in June. The animal owner was found guilty of 14 Class B animal neglect violations by the Lane County Justice Court. The owner was required to surrender all animals on the property to Lane County Animal Services and is prohibited from possessing animals for 5 years. This person has a history of animal neglect complaints and of refusing to cooperate with authorities to improve the health of her animals. Animals removed included poultry, parrots, peahens, horses, a miniature horse, goats, dogs, and cattle. The animals were quickly fostered, and most have found new homes. The owner was not cooperative with authorities during this removal. This is one of the most egregious cases of neglect Lane County Animal Services has ever encountered. Bringing this case to the Justice Court required months of follow-up and perseverance by the team. Dozens of animals are in better, safer places today because of their hard work. And today, we're attaching this to the core behavior of their passion to serve. John, do you have thoughts?
Just briefly, thank you, Board, Chair, Vice Chair. Our staff's pretty wonderful. If I had one comment about this particular case, it's the efficiency and speed as to which in admin we see them work. I think by the time I even made it down to the shelter, they had pretty much rehomed just about everything that was there in less than 24 hours. So that speaks loudly to their community contacts and partnerships that they've made over the years, and just their general love for what they do and care for the animals. So we're very proud of our staff, and just the nature of the work they do in this type of season. Unfortunately, fires become a regular thing for us as of late, but just their willingness, the constantness of roughly, basically being on call to move into action whenever we need them to do that. We were poised yesterday. Thankfully, we didn't have to do anything there. But as you know, we recently also set up a shelter out at Pisgah with that recent level 2. So we'll be ready and continue to do that throughout the summer so that we're there when the community needs us. So we're just thankful for the recognition. So it's mostly for these wonderful folks that do the real work back here, not those of us that hide in an office most of the time. So anyway, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so why don't we call the names and have the individuals come forward? Colton, I should turn it over to the board before we do that.
You'd like to have board comment before you present certificates? Is that what you just said? Sorry, I was jotting a note.
That was my thought, but how
Great.
would you like to proceed?
Great. That sounds great. Let's do that, and then we can have folks queue up to get their certificates, and then I think Devin wants to do a photo outside after. Is that right? Okay, great. Thank you.
Colton Mobley? Michael Johns?
Yeah, he couldn't join us today, so I can take that for him.
Crystal Windheim? Rachel Goss? Isabel Merritt?
Stacy could be with us.
Oh, and the last name is Stacy Manning. Thank you all very much.
To the board. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I sincerely want to appreciate your work. The particular incident that we're covering today is out Dorena area, which is the area in which I represent, and I got calls about that, and I know it's sometimes frustrating for people who call in about animal neglect because it takes time and all your preparation in order to eventually get out there and do the work that you need to do. And sometimes they don't always understand why we just can't go out there right away and take care of it. But knowing that you are so skilled at providing each and every step along the way, so when you do go in and they're rehomed within 24 hours, it is like executing a really complicated project in a very short amount of time. And I know that the neighbors out there really appreciate the work as well. Nobody wants to see these animals abused and neglected. It's actually just horrifying to see that. And this is something that you work on all the time, and it's so appreciated, and it's not always put in the public eye. So I just really appreciate your hard work, and thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you guys work on very, very limited resources with a limited staff, and you said time and preparation and all that. And I think that core value that we have at Lane County, passion to serve, you guys really do that well, and you've illustrated that well today on what you've done. And this, the whole way the system worked, and you worked it and had them housed in 24 hours, all those animals. Brilliant. And, you know, we couldn't do any of this without you, and you do so much more than, might I say, you're being paid for, and we appreciate that part about you too. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Seneca.
Yes, thanks everybody. This is for showing up. This is exciting, and what a win. You know, it's not always the most glorious job you guys have, but you do a great job at it. One thing I want to point out is not only staff shortages, but oftentimes funding shortages. And you guys always make do with what you have, and you're great stewardship. You're great stewards of the funds you do have. Being on the LCAS meeting, I mean, just things that you guys are going above and beyond, what the stock trailer you purchased, and just ways that you can be more efficient at what you're doing and finding extra places to take these animals. Because not this last fire, but the fire before we had out on Green Hill, my phone was just ringing, and these are people with horses that need a place to go, and they're panicked, and having you guys as a resource is huge. So thank you. We really do appreciate it.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Trigger. You know, we all dearly love our animals. There's no question about that. To Colton and Crystal, Rachel and Isabel, the work that you do takes care of the most important things that many people have in their life, and that is their animals. And we're looking at a single incident here, but you do this every single day. You step out and take care of the things that are the dearest to people. And when we look at the outward-facing work of Lane County, much of our work is hidden, and people take it for granted. But when you take care of the things that people dearly care about, then that's when you really get recognized, as you should be today for this. It's too bad that Michael and Stacy aren't here to enjoy or to receive the accolade as well, because it's a remarkable team. You know, I know this. Our son and his wife had a house fire, and the only thing that they could think about was getting their animals out safely. You know, so that's how passionate people are about it, and you serve that passion. Thank you very well. A passion to serve. Thank you.
I'll just add my voice to the chorus of appreciation to all of you. I think it's really important to note that you're caring for our constituents, if you will, who literally don't have a voice, who can't speak for themselves. So to know that they're in such good hands of folks who really care for them, really during the most stressful time, whether it's in response to neglected animals who've already been through an awful lot of strain, or in the hurry of an evacuation with stressed out owners. I can't imagine what all you have to sort of navigate and in terms of the emotional energy around your work when you step into a situation, often putting yourselves at risk, right? Because animals can behave really unpredictably when they're under stress. So you put a lot on the line, and we very much appreciate you. And it's wonderful that you could be here this morning to receive these comments. I hope it means something to you, and you take that with you out into the field as you do your work. Thank you so much. Thank you. Great. All right. Well, moving into our next item, we have our standard public comment time. We have a few people signed up here in Harris Hall. Then I'll turn it over to Tanya to see if there's anyone wishing to give testimony before the board online this morning. I will call speakers in the order in which they signed up. You will have 3 minutes. When I call your name, please step to the podium. Keep an eye on the clock on the wall. When you state your name for the record, your time will begin. First this morning, we'll welcome to the podium William Gary, and he'll be followed by Jim New.
Thank you. Thanks.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I see this morning that you fixed the signs. Commissioner Farr was identifying as Commissioner Seneca. I just wanted to thank the Commission and the Charter Review Commission for sharing with the public the analysis prepared on the measures proposed by my client, Mr. Long, the analysis prepared by Acting County Counsel Jeff Condit. Mr. Long and I agree with just about everything that is in the memo. We're lawyers, so of course we will find areas of minor disagreement, but nothing of any significance. Most significant to us is his conclusion on page 2 that, quote, the proposed charter amendments go directly to the structure of county government and are within the authority of Lane County voters to enact under both state and federal law. We obviously agree with that. He has also identified what he describes as ambiguities in the measure, and each of those we find to be helpful and thoughtful suggestions that we would encourage the Commission to consider and include if you make a decision to refer this measure. The first one concerning a conflict in the charter as it is drafted with the measure is actually the same issue that I identified in the letter to the commissioners on July 15th of this year. And we think that each of these changes does what they're intended to do, which is to make the intent of the measure more clear. And that was what we had been seeking all along. We never made a claim that we had written the perfect measure, and it, I think, demonstrates that with a collaborative process where more eyes are on the proposal, you end up with a better product. And so I thank the Commission for that, and I thank the Commission for the opportunity to respond to this memorandum. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Jim New, who will be followed by Charles C. Kaler.
Good morning, Chair Trieger and County Commissioners. My name is Jim New, and I live in Commissioner Seneca's ward. From what I have read, has been said by county staff, quoted and printed, or is considered factual information, let me get this straight. There's a Charter Review Citizens Committee of 15 members. Every 10 years, they do a review or redistricting based on census and make recommendations, with the last being about 2 years ago. This past spring, there was a proposal by a private attorney to amend the charter without a review of the committee, and was voted on by Commissioners Farr, Seneca, and Lovell without a public hearing to get it on the November ballot that will cost the citizens of Lane County tens of thousands of dollars. The Charter Review Committee was not able to meet, confer, and comment on this proposed amendment by the private attorney. The members of the Charter Review Committee have written testimony in objection to this process and impropriety and request it be addressed to them at a future meeting. They've expressed they are willing to review it, but Commissioners Farr, Seneca, and Lovell are not honoring that request and appear to be expeditiously moving this forward before an end of August deadline. I believe the quote by Commissioner Lovell was to keep the momentum rolling, just wanting to get it done and don't kick the can down the road, unquote, as in fast-tracking this through before anyone gets wind of it. Just to add, these three commissioners, Farr, Seneca, and Lovell, in one of their first meetings on this dais a year ago, sidestepped process protocol to install Commissioner Trieger as the next in line chair, and instead planted Commissioner Farr as chair, who most graciously was humbled and accepted. That process has happened faster than a 100-meter dash at the Olympics 2 days ago. Gentlemen, commissioners, to quote Vice Presidential candidate and Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, this stuff is weird. You come across as weird in your proposal to forcefully put this charter amendment past the people of Lane County without a public hearing and costing the county tens of thousands of dollars so you can gerrymander a district for your conservative interests. You all should be ashamed of yourselves. It is pretty despicable that you have such little regard for the people which you represent. Do you not think we do not see through this? Weird is in disbelief and uncanny. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Charles C. Kaler, who will be followed by Deborah Higbee.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chair Trieger, thank you. The League of Women Voters, guess what? I'm Charles C. Kaler, Vice President of the League of Women Voters of Lane County. The League of Women Voters of Lane County once again thank members of your Charter Review Committee for their work reviewing the charter proposal offered by Stan Long and Bill Gary. Also, once again, the League endorses the recommendations of the committee, rejecting the idea of a 2025 redistricting of commissioners' districts. Having agreed to reject an unnecessary redistricting, committee members have generously volunteered to continue their work on the proposal. There are many unresolved details in the Long-Gary proposal, making referral to the people unlikely and unhelpful at this time. Because more time is needed, the League urges you to let the committee continue its work. It's not timely to refer a measure about redistricting to the people. Indeed, the Charter Review Committee has spent time considering what language is most appropriate for the charter that is best stated in the county code or even in the bylaws of a redistricting committee. Thank you for considering the League's support of the Charter Review Committee recommendations. There is no need to send this proposal to a vote of the people. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. I'll welcome next Deborah Higbee to the mic, who will be followed by Keith Baskett.
Good morning, Chair Trieger and County Commissioners. My name is Deborah Higbee, and I live in District 1 in the River Road area, and I appreciate the opportunity to testify this morning. The current board majority approved a last-minute proposal from a private law firm to change the county charter, rejecting the work of your committee without including a future public hearing dedicated to the new amendments. The district boundaries determine who we can vote for. It appears that what you're doing is blatant gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is the practice of drawing districts to favor one political party or racial group. It skews election results, makes races less competitive, hurts communities, and thwarts the will of the voter. It essentially kills democracy. The Citizens Redistricting Committee recommended not redistricting until the next round of census data. The Stan Long proposed redistricting has not been subjected to formal analysis, and the proposal would make changes that can potentially influence who gets elected to the county commission. The current board majority wants Stan Long's proposal to go in front of the voters, regardless of the Charter Review Committee's recommendation, even though there is no legitimate reason except that it's politically motivated. Sandlot's proposed redistricting would make it harder for a progressive commissioner to be elected in North Eugene, which happens to be Commissioner Farr's district. In addition, the proposal to reset the redistricting committee for 2025 will undermine our democracy and the independent redistricting process established in 2021. Please consider your decisions. It's unacceptable to gerrymander to favor one party over another. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Keith Basquette, who will be followed by David Eichel.
I did have some berries over there. I had some cobbler. I ate it for 3 days. Okay, I'm back again. Last Tuesday, I was just beginning to explain.
Would you please state your name for the record, just so we're
Keith
consistent? Thank you.
Basquette.
Thank you.
Sorry. Last Tuesday, I was just beginning to explain how this all started with my property on the McKenzie. The Lane County Code, which is written by the county, usually, after lots of input from the constituents, is put into play by the county commissioners they're voted on. The final authority on anything Lane County does, the elected officials. That should be the way it is on everything. In Chapter 16 of that code, it says a landowner can build in a floodway if they meet a few exceptions. For me, one of them was the whole property has to be in the floodway. Mine was. From the river to the floodplain, it's about 700 feet. My property's 400 to 600 feet, so I'm just outside of the floodplain. I'm also only about 8 to 10 inches below the floodplain. We're not talking feet, we're talking inches. We're not talking miles, we're talking 100 feet. That's how close I am to the edge of the floodplain. I'm not on the riverbank, I'm several hundred feet away. The other exception is that I have to have a hydraulic engineer say that I can safely build in that area and cause a no-rise condition. I met both of those. I have an easement to my property from the highway, which is about a quarter-mile long. Some of it is below the floodplain, in the floodway. Before I decided to spend tens of thousands of dollars on engineering, I wanted to know if we could raise the road, which was about 140 feet in the floodway. If we had to raise this, it would literally be like building a dam. It would have just been crazy, not very feasible, and I wouldn't have gone forward. We went to the county with our proposal and asked them straight out if the road would be a factor, because it would ruin the project. The lead waterway planner, the head person, Deanna Wright, after explaining to her, said, "That would be crazy. We would never require that of you. But I will double check anyway." She came back a week later and said, "You're fine. The road is not an issue." We were approved. It went through. The application was approved. Guess what stopped me on my late appeal? The road. Is that right? And they literally said to me, "We can't hold a planner liable or responsible for information they give you that might not be correct." That's absurd. Where's the accountability? There isn't any. The only recourse is to appeal to LUBA for hundreds of thousands of dollars, as the county wiped the only thing I could possibly do, the constituents, several years ago, which was appeal to the commissioners. The only county that does this. Aren't they trying to align with the state? Yet they took that away, which is just the opposite of what they say. Who did this? How absurd. How can this be changed? Whose side is the commission on?
Thank you for your public
Can I
comment.
ask one more quick question?
I'm sorry, sir, your time's expired, and I do need to be consistent, so it's fair to others, but thank you. You are welcome to email the board with any follow-up. Thank you. Next up is David Eigel, followed by Hannah, looks like, Gurley. Please correct me when you get to the podium. Thank you.
I'm David Eigel. The fiasco of using county funds for a memorial based on falsified history really offends me. What's been in the news lately about the North Bank is I find appalling. Referencing the Eugene Weekly, in the 1940s, 5 black families, the Reynolds, etc., built homes on what is now Northwest Alton Baker Park, since building within Eugene city limits was illegal for any person of color per local legislation. There's a problem. That's absolute nonsense. Traveling black families always had a place to stay. purchased by CB and Annie Mims in 48. The now historic landmark would host dozens of black travelers who could not find a place to stay in town. Rather misleading. For example, in 1904, the Fisk Jubilee Singers stayed in a downtown Eugene hotel after being brought in here by that noted white supremacist violent man, Professor Dunn. Yeah, right. Back then, any person of color could not purchase land in Eugene due to deed restrictions, intimidation, and sundown racism, where non-whites were excluded through violence, intimidation, and discriminatory laws. Oh, again, absolute nonsense. Wiley Griffin died in 1913, a homeowner. In May of 1948, the U.S. Supreme Court invalidated all property covenants based on race, etc. They're not enforceable. During the July 22nd press conference, the Lane County Board of Commissioners offered a formal apology for actions it took 75 years ago. We recognize that deep injustice was inflicted upon these families and that there are long-lasting impacts on them and on their descendants, County Commission Chair Lori Traeger said. We at Lane County, in fact, do commit to ensuring that the history of the Ferry Street Village not be forgotten, she said. Apparently, you want to, Commissioner Traeger, you want to promote falsified history, is that correct? Am I correct here? What's going on? This is public money. This stuff is nonsense. I've documented everything I'm referring to and more, and I've sent it to you, and the county needs to take actions to withdraw support for this kind of nonsense. I mean, this is really an embarrassment. I mean, point by point. I'll be writing more on it, blow by blow. This stuff is just sick, and it needs to stop now. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next is Hannah, and I will let you let me know how to pronounce your last name. Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning. It's Hannah Grace, and this is my fiance Justin and our son Jasper. We recently moved to Blue River in May and fell in love with it. Blue River Drive is our little street. We had more community there than ever before compared to other places we've lived. Someday we'd like to make it our forever home. That being said, everything is perfect over there, nice, secluded, right by the reservoir and Mackenzie River, growing our family and living our homesteading dreams. Our only complaint would be the road safety. We have a school further down the road and a bridge coming into the main part of our unincorporated community. Many people are cutting through due to the Mackenzie Bridge work and tourists coming through. Racing by, definitely speeding. We've got cars, trucks, semis, you name it. Imagine peacefully relaxing in your beautiful paradise, then speeding, roaring cars coming out, not respecting the given speed limit. As a new mother, it's scary bringing our son into a stroller and our dog on a walk to the park, As a new mother, it's scary to bring our son in a stroller and our dog on a walk to the park or going to the track and field with cars zooming past us, speeding, and not even moving over for us. This happens every day, no matter the time or side of the road we're on. Many neighbors have communicated their concerns. We have neighbors with kids who would love to ride their bikes, but are rightfully scared to do so. Other neighbor's friend was coming to visit her and almost got in an accident due to careless drivers. We also have dogs and cats on our street. They are car smart, but it only takes one to bolt out the door and who knows what might happen. So whether it's a kid walking to school, someone getting on the transit bus, a dog, or kids playing, etc., it only takes one car and one reckless driver. A dog, a cat, or a child. With everything this place has gone through, this should be the least of our worries. We ask you for the safety of our loved ones in our community to please consider lowering the speed limit significantly. Currently, it is at 45 miles per hour, although records are showing 85% of people are driving at 55 miles per hour. We appreciate what Lane County traffic has done so far, but would like further action to take place. Thank you very much for taking time to hear our concern, and y'all have a blessed day. Sincerely, the community at Blue River Drive, Vida, Oregon.
Thank you for your public comment and for bringing such an adorable baby with you. It was just wonderful. Thank you. Next up, I'll welcome Deborah McGee, who will be followed by Ryan Moore.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Deborah McGee. I've lived rurally in Lane County for 45 years. Thank you for this opportunity to address you. Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Commissioners, you showed us who you were when you broke protocol at the first meeting of the year when you voted a second term for the at-time current president, Pat Farr, rather than passing the torch to the vice chair, a woman, Lori Trieger, as was tradition and protocol. And why did you do that? Two of you were brand new to the commission. Commissioner Trieger is president now, so really no good reason for that little move. I think it was just you showing us that you could do it, showing us you had the votes and the power. It's insulting and disrespectful to the citizens and the Charter Review Committee to have them work long and hard and then have you reject their recommendations and instead accept recommendations from a private law firm. Why? Why did you accept one local attorney's recommendations, especially the redistricting piece, over the appointed committee of county citizens? Why did you want the proposal by Long to be on the ballot so badly? Well, according to reporting by Bentley Freeman, one result of Long's proposal is that it makes it harder for a progressive commissioner to be elected in the North Eugene area by taking the Whitaker, a known progressive area, out of that district into the already progressive area of South Eugene. You are gerrymandering to maintain the status quo. You know, I hate to say this. I know men I love. I have a brother. I have a father. What this feels like is white men maintaining the status quo. You have broken our trust. I know you all got elected, but with people learning and seeing and believing who you really are, that may change. So you accepted Long proposal, and you're going to waste thousands of taxpayer dollars putting it on the ballot against the recommendations of a committee, commissioners appointed to do the work. This is neither necessary nor helpful. Mr. Gary, representing Long, said in his letter, the existing process can foster a perception that redistricting decisions are influenced by political gerrymandering, discrimination, and self-interest. Wow, what BS doublespeak. You're not doing this to be fair. You're doing this to maintain your conservative commission domination. This redistricting decision is influenced by political gerrymandering, discrimination, and self-interest. I call foul. You are wasting taxpayer monies. We will educate our county community and work to vote your proposal down. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Ryan Moore.
Hi, Chair Trieger, members of the commission. I'm Ryan Moore. I grew up in rural Marcola, Oregon. I now live in Eugene in Chair Trieger's district. I think it's too early for me to be eloquent. Sorry in advance. Hopefully that means I don't use the full 3 minutes. So I grew up rural with values like fiscal responsibility, fairly political family. I'm here to say the redistricting plan doesn't really smack of fiscal responsibility to me. It's rushed. From what I hear, it opens us up to some legal risks, especially if the vague language isn't cleared up. Additionally, I was reading in a news article that the elections department, your elections department, has spoken up that there might be some confusion. They haven't had time to plan for these unanticipated changes, and they're also going to be implementing, or at least allowing a vote on ranked choice voting, so doing both of those at the same time. It seems likely there could be some mistakes, and I mention that because I think it's a sacred duty you all have as our elected officials. If voters see that there are mistakes, rush mistakes on an issue that some, as you've heard, are calling gerrymandering, it's just going to really ruin people's already low faith in our government. That's really something we can't afford to do right now. So again, I know you're trying to act in best faith for our community. I think this will need more time. It seems rushed and honestly whimsical. Sorry to use that word. Ryan Moore, thanks for your time.
Thank you for your public comment. At this time, I'll turn it over to Tanya to see if there's anyone online wishing to speak before the commission this morning.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to give public comment at the Board of County Commissioners meeting for August 6th, please raise your virtual hand. Shannon, I have allowed you to speak. Would you like to be on camera?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to send you a request to be a panelist. You'll have to accept that. Go ahead and unmute your camera.
Oh, There we go.
All right. Thank you. You may begin your public comment.
Sorry, I wanted to come in today. I kind of have a busy day today. I'm volunteering at the, anyway. So my name's Shannon Goodpasture Lair. I live in Blue River, Oregon. I spoke with you guys last week about my unique challenges up here. And since then, I've 3 different times I've tried to turn in a permit for a temporary dwelling on my property while I'm building, and three times the county has will not take. They won't even accept my request, which I do not understand. So I guess I'm in a way seeking your help with, I guess navigating this challenging situation, and I appreciate your time and all the work that you guys do. I meet the qualifications. I have temporary power, I have water, and I have a septic tank that's passed inspection, that has been inspected and is fine. Actually, I have a 1 repair scheduled, but yeah. Anyway, so I'm not sure why I feel like the planning committee it sets up like roadblocks for me being able to rebuild on my property here in Blue River. Thanks for listening, and I don't know if anyone has any questions for me.
We generally don't do a dialogue at this time. This is just your time to speak to us.
Okay. So yeah, thank you again for the time, giving me the time to speak to you guys and help me, because technically right now I'm out of compliance and in danger of being evicted from my property. And I feel like, I don't understand why the county is not accepting my temporary dwelling permit. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Chair, I do not see anyone other hands raised, so I will return the meeting back to you.
Thank you, Tanya. At this time, I'll see if there's anyone who's arrived in Harris Hall since we turned in the sign-in sheet who still wishes to provide testimony. Please step to the podium. When you do, please state your name for the record, at which time your 3-minute clock will begin.
Yes, Commissioner, honorable commissioners. My name is Scott Bartlett, and honored to speak before you today. I could be wrong, I often am, but I do have some questions about the process and the product of your redistricting proposal that is sandwiched within the long proposal for a partisan-free selection process for your decennial redistricting process. I've been on the this redistricting county committee twice, in 2001 and 2011. I learned quite a lot about it, and there were political dynamics on it. One thing that was valuable to me was to be able to speak with commissioners and to ask them, in terms of the scenario maps that we were creating to try to adjust population changes, what they felt was inappropriate about their districts. Now, I could be wrong, but it seems to me that really the motivation, at least one of your motivations here, pertains to the 2026 election, and perhaps your discomfort with the existing district boundaries. And maybe you think that they are not suitably dovetailed to your specific district. There may be some dissonance there. And I think that Your thinking this is certainly not illegitimate in terms of just theoretically, but I really think that it's important to have some truth in disclosure. For example, I don't know Stan Long except by reputation. He seems to be a fine person of erudition and community service record. But out of the blue, he comes forth with this elaborate Magna Carta with subsection this and go to circuit court that. And then there are specific references to how districts shall be conformed in terms of Roosevelt or this or that. I think you all at least should tell us what you think is necessary about redistricting, what you think are the implications here, whether or not you have had communication either directly or indirectly through intermediaries or whatever with Mr. Long or Mr. Gary, so we know where it's coming from. We just know where it's coming from. County government is determined by a mathematical formula, count to 3. I respect that. But I will tell you that redistricting is actually a pretty fun process. And at one point, we were told, hey, you've got to be plus or minus 5. We got to 0 deviation.
Thank you.
And you can do that.
Thank you for your public comment.
Tell us the truth, please.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to provide testimony this morning before the Board of Commissioners? Seeing none, I will close the public comment portion, and thank you all for coming, and turn it over to the board for any response to public comment or other issues or remonstrance on the board's mind this morning. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank everybody who came out this morning, including those who have been speaking about the Charter Review Committee. Many of the things that you stated were my concerns as well, but I'll reserve most of my comments until we get to that on our agenda, and I hope you can stay for that work session. I also wanted to address Hannah Grace, and I'm so sorry that they left, and wanted to let them know that I'm happy to assist them. You know, the speed limits in our rural areas are fast, and it actually contributes to a lot of very dangerous roadways and increases our chances of fatalities in those locations. And unfortunately, Lane County roads are well known for that. It is a very frustrating manner to go through the process of trying to reduce those speeds because it is not completely within the county's control. We do generally have to apply to the state for approval for those road speed reductions, and we don't always get it. And then when you couple that with actual work that's being done on the road, it can really increase the chances of somebody or animals getting hurt even more. But I'm happy to work on that with our lovely Becky Taylor in our roads and planning department. And if Shannon Goodpasture is still on as well, I just want to extend again that I'm happy to work with you on what we can do to help you with your permit. Generally, if a permit is not fully put together, the planning department can't really take it in as an application. It has to have every piece to it. And if something's missing, then it will request that material before it's completely submitted. I'm not sure if that's the case in this particular setting, but again, Shannon, if you're on, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Wow, kind of a good morning there. Nice to hear from all of you. Your passion is well heard, and it feels like I just got a spanking from my mother, so I like that too. I appreciate that because you have the ability and the freedom to address your government in a way that you see fit, and I'm going to listen because I work for you, so I appreciate that very much. I do want to also echo the words of my colleague Commissioner Buck that I'll probably air most of my comments on the redistricting thing toward the item when it comes up, but I just want to also just bring out a couple of things that I think were said that I think will kind of prep some of those things. And when William Garrett, you stepped forward and you said, never made a claim, we'd written a perfect measure. That's so true. And I think that's what the reason why we decided to put that back in front of the commissioner or the Charter Review Committee again. But I want to also say for the public record once again, this Gary Long proposal is not a last minute item. It's been on the desk of our county administrator and 2 city and county commissioners since 2020. Unfortunately, it was not included in the last Charter Review's marching orders because for whatever reason, I don't know. Secondly, from my view, if you want to know why I feel this way, is that I don't believe that the metro area of Eugene needs 5 votes and who the county commissioners are. By population, they should only have 2.8. So that to me is a very important item of, if you will, call that gerrymandering, that Eugene Metro gets to decide all of the issues of county commissioners selections over the rural counties. So I think that's an unfair gerrymandered advantage that's already in place that I would like to correct. The sacred duty that we have as elected, you're right, we take that very seriously. Ryan, thank you for reminding us about that, and I'm already on your page agreeing that voters already have a very low opinion of politics and politicians and the names that they give us, but I think realistically, we need to be known a little bit more for what we have in our heart and in our minds and in our ways to properly serve our constituents, because even though we may have heard a lot of contrary opinions to this proposal, I think the independence and nonpartisanship of it is worth taking a look at, and I've had a good many of my constituents ask me to continue this forward. I also want to just say one more thing about the what appears to be a current board majority. Let me remind you that Commissioner Farr is registered as an independent. This is probably the most equally seated board that we've seen in decades. So I just want to bring that out. And as far as Keith Basket, we are working diligently to help you out. Fear not. Thank you for keep coming. And Shannon, we're going to continue to help you out as well. There's some things that with the land management department, there's always some hiccups, and there's many people that come and give us their side of the story. And while we know that there's some issues, we're here to help get through those. So I'm here to stand by that and help you out. So thank you very much for all your comments, and keep coming back. Thank you.
Commissioner Seneca.
Sure. Thanks everybody for coming out. To clear there even further, I'm actually not affiliated. My grandpa was an old school Union Democrat. My father was a Republican, and they both made grade points. I couldn't pick a side, didn't have to pick a side, so I went not affiliated, just to help some people out in the crowd. Mr. Gary, I also was very impressed with Jeff Condon and Leonie Reeves over here during the Charter Review Committee meetings. I'll save most of my comments for that, but I wanted to just reiterate that being part of that process, Morgan Monroe, you run a great meeting. You are a fantastic chair of that Charter Review Committee. So we'll get more into the weeds in that when we get to that part. Keith Basket, I'm going to look into your case more. I need to, our planning director has reached out and filled us in on some of the back story of what you're dealing with. And I would like to get with Mr. Miller, and maybe we can meet together and just kind of try and iron some of this stuff out and see, you know, your points of the appeal coming in late and what that looked like and so on and so forth. And we need to start moving the needle on some of these things. And yeah, we lost Blue River, but it sounds like Commissioner Buck's going to be on that. So yeah, thanks everybody for coming out. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Trigger. You know, we're all prone We're all prone to believing only what supports what we already believe. And we look for evidence to support what we already believe, often ignoring or overlooking evidence that goes against what we already believe. You know, people write a story, and then they want to search for evidence to support the story that they've already written. We see that every single day. We see that every single day. And it really affects the people who are a part of the story. You know, you talk about the current board majority. Depends which day you look. You know, if you were here to talk about the IMERF, for instance, you would be talking about the board majority. You'd be talking about me and Commissioner Trieger and Commissioner Buck and our vote in favor of the IMERF. You talk about other things that may be me and Commissioner Lovell and Commissioner Senega. But really, the board commission is based upon what the particular item is, the board majority. Keep an eye on it and research a little bit beyond what it is that you want to believe. Look at the things that maybe don't support fully what it is that you want to believe. You might have your eyes opened a little bit. Regarding redistricting, you know, I sat with the redistricting committee last week, Chairman Rowe, and I echo all of the accolades that have been given to you and your ability to chair that committee. The 2 meetings last week I thought were remarkable in the amount of ground that you were able to cover, the amount of discussion that was facilitated, and you were the one with the gavel. You were the one that brought it all together. I wish more people could have been at those meetings. I really wish people could have been at that meetings because they might have seen some things that didn't fully support exactly what it is they want to believe. And we'll go forward with that in further discussion later on today. You know, one of you said, I think it was Deborah McGee said, put something on the ballot and we'll work to vote it down. That is how it works, isn't it? This is democracy. You know, that is a true. When I came to America, I marveled at how the American voting system worked. You get to vote, and in a popular vote, you get to really exercise what is called democracy. That is the ultimate democracy, is the popular vote at the ballots. And that is something that we do exercise. You know, when we put forward the sheriff's levy 3 times, it passed. When we put forward the courthouse, it failed. Sometimes it passes, sometimes it fails. And really the majority of people who choose to vote on that given day, and when that given day happens to be a presidential election, it's more people typically. The majority of people who choose to vote on that day are the ones who decide what true democracy is in this country. And people who put things on the ballot are just exercising the right to put things on the ballot, or they're exercising the motions to put things on the ballot so that ultimate democracy can weigh in. Whether or not you agree or disagree with what's being placed on the ballot, that's when you have a chance to talk about it. That is a true public hearing, isn't it? You have months and months of wide open public hearing before the ballot date. So that's the way that works. As far as I know, you know, I think that it's important to understand that we are here to serve, that I'm elected to serve. You talk about, Ms. Higgins, you talk about the gerrymandered North Eugene district. Well, I was just reelected in the existent North Eugene district. I was elected twice in the previous North Eugene district. Doesn't seem to make a difference. I would win by a landslide in both of them. So I think that we can manufacture, or we can draw district lines in a way that really avoid political input. And I hate the word gerrymandering because there's never been a redistricting. Linda Lynch, you were around when I was redistricting twice for the city of Eugene. One time it was a huge lift where we completely revised the districts of the wards in Eugene. And because it was done non-politically, it went through, and really those district lines, those ward lines kind of uphold today. That's what it's all about. And if something is incorrect and something is wrong, then you work to correct it, no matter what the timing. It doesn't have to be every 10 years. It doesn't have to be every 1 year or 2 years. At the point at which you find something that's not correct, then that's when you work to revise it. I'm going to correct Commissioner Lovell on a couple of things. You talked about Eugene's metro area potentially having 5 commissioners. It's the city of Eugene in the current district and could have 5 commissioners. All 5 from the city of Eugene in the current districting. And you also called me independent. I'm not independent, I'm non-affiliated. There's a difference. But on the bright side of things, I want you all to take a moment to take a look out of the back window. Lane County Farmers Market is in operation today. I have a picture of when we signed, Greg Rickoff, you were there, we signed the deed that gave that land to the farmers market. And it's operating today. Go buy berries, go buy something fresh, enjoy the day. And if you take a look at last week's board meeting, every single vote was unanimous, every single vote. So you think about the majority of a Board of Commissioners or the majority of any board, look at the specific votes that they're taking, look at why they do it, and understand this. Something that Francis Bacon wrote many, many years ago that we all should adhere to. Power to do right is the true and lawful end of aspiring.
Thank you. I will be brief because we do have a 10 a.m. time certain. Mr. Eigel, my last name is pronounced Trieger, so if you'd like to address me again in the future, that's a note for you. I would like to thank our Senator, Jeff Merkley. Commissioner Buck was able to attend along with me. Our senators, our state senators, Wyden and Merkley, we are so fortunate to be represented by them here. They are both such hardworking, caring, and attentive representatives, and both of them do town halls every year in every county. This was, I think the 573rd town hall Senator Merkley has done. So he was right here in Lane County, in Eugene, in my district. So I had the distinct honor of being able to introduce him at his town hall meeting last week on Friday, and the range of topics that came up from the audience, much like what we have before us here, was really fascinating and important to hear what's on people's mind. Of course, with our federal delegation, there were some international issues, but also lots of discussion and energy around wildfires and emergency preparedness, and also the housing crisis and folks living unsheltered. So we see a lot of reflection from what's happening nationally to what we're facing and working on right here at home. So I just want to appreciate Senator Merkley and understand Senator Wyden's going to be in your district, Commissioner Seneca, doing a town hall in Florence later this week. So just appreciation to our federal delegation, as I often like to remind people, as does our administrator, that well over half of the revenue that we have at Lane County to deliver services comes from state and federal entities. And so having those strong relationships and that open communication with our delegation is really key to making sure we have the resource to do what we need to do for our communities here. So thank you to them. With that, we have a 10 a.m. time certain in just a couple of minutes. The next item before us is our consent calendar, and my apologies to our Health and Human Services Director, Eve Gray, who's here, but we're going to have to move those items to after our 10 certain item. But we do have a consent calendar before us and time to attend to that business if there's a motion.
Sure, I'd like to make a motion to move to accept and adopt the consent calendar for Tuesday, August 6, 2024.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved by the Vice Chair and seconded by Commissioner Buck to adopt today's consent calendar. These are all items considered routine. The materials are available online, so there is no discussion to the motion. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you all. We will now, jumping over items 7A and B, move into county administration. And this is discussion and a board order before us. Board Order 24-08-06-06 in the matter of referring to elections and amendment to the Lane County Home Rule Charter. And I will welcome, good morning, Judy Williams, Chief of Staff, Jenna Cusimano from our Office of Economic Development, our representative from County Council's office, Stephen Thiel, is with us. Good morning, thank you. And our stellar volunteer chair of the Charter Review Committee, Morgan Monroe. Good morning, all of you, and welcome. I assume I'm turning it over to, am I turning it over to you, Jenna? Or Judy? Okay, great. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Trieger, Commissioners. Thank you so much for having us here today. We'll just give a quick recap to kind of tee up the conversation before we turn it over to our committee chair, Morgan Monroe. Just a recap of the July 16th Board of County Commissioners meeting. You all took action to have forwarded to the November ballot the 3 Charter Review Committee recommended sections for repeal of the Lane County Charter. That was Section 32, around spending limitation, Section 33, East Alton Baker Park, Section 34, income tax cap, and then at that time you also opted to not move forward to the ballot the sections that the Charter Review Committee recommended for revision. So that was Section 10.3.C, the titles and descriptions of commissioner districts, revised Sections 10.3.D and E, which is around the redistricting process and the Independent Redistricting Committee, which we'll be speaking to in greater detail today, as well as to revise Section 35, the Charter Review Committee. However, at that same meeting, you also directed staff to come back with a board order by August 6, 2024, which is why we are here today, including the Charter Review Committee review with the items and statutes included in the Harangue Long proposal, along with board suggestions for the formation of the redistricting committee standards, which could be put before the public for a vote in time for the November 5th, 2024 general election.
I have a couple slides to go over, and then I'll turn it over to Chair Morgan Monroe. So just briefly touching over the materials in your packet, as we do have quite a bit of material, and just wanted to highlight that Attachment A is in fact the May 23rd Harangue Long proposal. Attachment B is a letter from our county clerk, also addressed to the Charter Review Committee, and she did speak with the Charter Review Committee as well in response to the Harangue Long proposal. Attachment C is the legal analysis that was provided by Miller Nash. And then Attachment D is a Secretary of State redistricting directive, which a lot of the terms, definitions, requirements, state statutes around redistricting, many of which were discussed and reflected in discussions with the Charter Review Committee. So I wanted to provide that. And then as the board assignment, we did work closely, and I just wanted to highlight, and it's been mentioned here at public comment and with the commissioners as well, the dedication and hard work of the Charter Review Committee, pulling together, dropping a lot of their daily aspects, many of which whom work full-time, and putting in that effort to show up and have very robust conversations, great dialogue. So the Charter Review Committee, all 7 members came together 4 days starting July 26th through July 31st, meeting each day to do the work and review and come up with some comments and suggestions. Attachment E is a summary. It's a report from the Charter Review Committee addressing many of the aspects that were brought up in those 4 meetings. Attachment F is the comments on each section and many areas of the Harangue Long proposal. Attachment F-1 is those expanded comments, as there were quite a few, and we wanted to make sure that everybody could read those comments. And then I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Morgan Monroe, who chaired the Charter Review Committee, and she's going to cover areas of unanimous agreement among the group, as well as some high-level questions, and then we'll go over some next steps.
Thank you. I want to thank the commissioners for having us back again, and thank the staff. As every minute that the committee spent on this, the staff spent many more than 2. And so it's always a pleasure to get to work with staff here at Lane County. You have a fantastic team, and they help community members who come in and try to do our community role as this democratic process. We couldn't do it without them. So much thanks to all the staff that helped with this. So we, in 4 very busy meetings, which many of you attended and listened to, went over as well as we could in the time we had the Harangue Long proposal that you sent back to us for review and for recommendations. And our committee came up with some areas of unanimous agreement. And they are both in the presentation, and then they're also on the slide. And the committee unanimously recommends that the commissioners do not initiate the mid-cycle redistricting effort that's proposed in 25. We heard a fascinating and impactful presentation from your own county clerk, and she spoke to the threat to election integrity and security in this county if redistricting was initiated in 2025. There were lots of other reasons why committee members were concerned and had questions about a mid-cycle redistrict, but when it comes to the integrity and the security of local elections, that I mean, when in doubt, that matters most. And so I can speak to more if we go through questions, what some of the other factors were. You read my novels that I wrote in the committee minutes and notes. They're not minutes, but that report. And that's why staff had to figure out how do you show comments that don't get truncated, because we had such robust discussion on some of these points, and I really tried in my comments on there to represent the discussion that the committee had. So you'll see throughout the comments, it'll say the committee was unanimous on this point, or some of the committee felt this, some of the committee felt that. We had 8 hours of meetings for y'all to track. I wanted to provide something so that people wouldn't have to watch all of those meetings, and you could kind of get the bigger gist of what we talked about. The other unanimous one of the other unanimous recommendations is that the commissioners do not move forward with the proposal to amend the commissioner district definitions. This was another space that we had very robust conversation on. It was the last day that we had to meet, but we went through what are some of the challenges presented with the proposed amendment to those definitions. And again, we can talk about that more if you have questions later. We also unanimously recommended that the role of the county clerk be dramatically changed from the proposal, the original proposal. The vast majority of the times where the county clerk is mentioned, we would recommend that just be changed to Lane County or the county to do that. That office is certainly not staffed for that kind of work, and also I think it speaks to the question of which department in the county is best suited to doing that work. I think the intent was to try to have someone who oversees elections do it, because elections and redistricting can seem like they go hand in hand, but they're actually very different work. And so we would recommend that that role be changed pretty dramatically. We also recommend that the legal analysis from County Counsel and Miller Nash, particularly the memo dated July 24th, 2024, be accepted. We strongly agreed with that memo. And again, the Miller Nash team was also great to work with. They're not technically county employees, but I want to make sure I thank them as well. And then we also recommended a pretty significant change, and this was a unanimous recommendation, that the only required qualification for membership be that someone be a current voter, a currently registered voter in Lane County. The other requirements had some time elements to them that would rule out essentially everyone under 22. It would also rule out anyone who was a new citizen. It was a pretty dramatic, and again, unintentional, I think. I think it was written because they wanted to say, if you're an active participant in the political process, that's a factor for us. But the challenge was the unintended consequences of that were pretty dramatic in who would be disqualified from serving on the committee. And so I think that's going to come up a lot in these high-level questions that we identified, which are going to be that next slide, where often what we talked through was, this is how the sentence is written in the proposal. What would that actually look like in practice? If we tried to enact this exactly as written, what would happen? And we took that very seriously because this is a proposed charter amendment. This is not a space where we get to have a rough draft and we get to say, oh, we tried it once, now we can fix it. You have to take that back to the voters. And that costs significant time and significant money. And also, if you found out mid-redistricting or mid-effort that something wasn't working, you wouldn't be able to change it. You would still have to follow it as written in the charter. And that is a very significant factor. So here are some things that came up, and some of these are pretty high-level questions, so indulge me. I was trying to figure out how do I summarize all those meetings, and so some of these get a little philosophical. All right. One of the pieces is really, should the authority to determine final commissioner district maps be retained by the county commissioners, the way it is in the current charter, or should this authority be fully assigned to a redistricting committee? The Gary Long proposal fully takes the authority to decide the maps, both to draw them and to decide which map is fully removed from commissioners. There are aspects of that that committee members thought were great. I've got committee members loved the independence of that. They love the idea that elected officials wouldn't be picking their future voters. We also had committee members who were deeply concerned about the lack of accountability with that space, and also the question of what happens if somehow it's wrong, right? I think that comes up a lot with these questions about the mid-cycle redistricting. What do we do then? What would happen for the voters? Who's accountable to whom? The second piece, so this is B, is should membership criteria and the selection process for the committee prioritize random selection or intentional representation? We are never going to, I'm going to say never, and this is a big word for me, it's a math, I'm talking about math, and I'm saying never. We are never going to have a sub-pool of applicants or a sample size big enough in this county for us to have a fully representative group that is picked randomly. So if you choose random, there are lots of reasons to choose random, right? There are also considerations that when you go in that direction, you are removing the opportunity or the guarantee of representation. And that is a really hairy issue with this. A lot of folks on the committee were strongly interested in the random opportunity when you're looking at how do you seat this committee. And so you'll see in Initiative 14 that some of this was based on. They actually have a second effort where they have a random subpool that's drawn from, and then there's an opportunity to go back and add a few committee members to ensure that aspects of representation are still maintained. The many levels of complexity about who is and I'm going to say qualified in a technical term. I'm not talking about their fabulousness. I'm talking about who is qualified or disqualified in their application. That question of qualification and disqualification, we came back to again and again, and it's really, really thorny. What accountability might or should exist between the committee and the residents of Lane County? I think I've already touched on that some, but it's one that we, again, came back to over and over. What would the role or involvement be of the commissioners in a redistricting committee? The current redistricting committee the county has in code, in Lane Manual, is called an independent redistricting committee. This committee proposal is for a citizens redistricting committee. And throughout each of those, there's a different role that the commissioners play. And it was unclear. The committee was not of one mind as to what role would be preferred for the commissioners to play in a redistricting effort. And then we get down into this question of what really, so this is E, what really belongs in a county charter, in the Lane Manual, or in committee bylaws. Again, bylaws are going to be the easiest thing to update. Lane Manual is going to be the second. It's still plenty challenging. You all still have to have a majority that agrees, and there's lots of work and public hearings that go into that. And then the county charter, the residents, the voters of Lane County have to fully approve that majority for a charter review, for a charter amendment and revision. That's a very, very high bar. And so that's a space where our committee, and again, we're the charter review committee. We're the folks who are particularly caring about how a sentence is written in the charter and looking at that question, what's going to stand the test of time. So that was a question we came back to. We also looked at, and this F is a little fiddly, so bear with me. In what ways might a charter amendment limit what might be included in Lane Manual and committee bylaws? And then B and C are looking at the conforming adjustments and also what would then be required of the manual and committee bylaws. And the question that, I apologize, this report was written very quickly in order to get it to you. The question that F is asking is this laying out the minimum responsibility that the county has and the committee has, or is it laying out the maximum authority? Is this charter amendment saying you must do at least this much? Or are pieces of this charter amendment saying you can do no more than this? And at different points in the amendment, one might hope that you would interpret that differently, right? When we're looking at some of the bylaws that are described, should just those pieces be included in the bylaws? And you see in that board order that you've got in your packet. Or are there other spaces where the commissioners or Lane Manual or bylaws could do no more than that? And so that piece gets very hairy. The G is then the role or involvement of the county clerk. What should that be? And then what might disqualify potential members? You'll see that is one of the areas where I think we had the longest, some of the longest comments in that. That's going to be section 5. Oh, yeah. And so as you go through there in your report, that question of that is very complicated, and I would appreciate an opportunity if any of you have a question to talk about that, but I'm going to go on, honor this time. We've got a question also of what are the risks that are being created for the county? What lawsuits are you potentially creating the risk of? What rights are you acknowledging or making a limitation for? If you're limiting someone from serving on this committee because of where they work or because of a job they had, some of these factors really get to some complicated legal questions that could put the county at legal risk because you may or may not be, you may be limiting that person's rights as a citizen and as a voter, and that's a much bigger question, but it was enough of a question that our committee noted it. And then also, how might a redistricting committee be set up for success? That's not the question we were asked. We were asked to review this proposal, and we did as best we could with that. But there is a larger question that I would, as Morgan personally, would encourage you to consider is what would setting up a redistricting committee for success look like in this community? Our final is our next steps, and our committee strongly recommends that any proposal in this area, more time be taken, that there's longer review, that there's more input, that there's more research, and really doing it well before you put it up to the voters, before you put something that could get added to the charter, to really put in more and sufficient time so that something great is being put forward. And so I will pause there. That was a very long report, I apologize. Judy, what happens next?
Thank you very much, Morgan. Great summary of all of the work in the materials and the discussions, an overview of the Charter Review Committee's role. I wanted to we have got one last slide, and I will turn it over to you, Chair Trieger. In terms of next steps, and I don't want to speak, there's so many steps or options that you could go. So again, just highlighting the why we're here today and the specific board assignment, which was to bring back a board order. So as you've heard, the Charter Review Committee didn't have the time, nor was it their role to create a board order. They did give you their feedback. So our legal team put together a board order and a draft language, and so that is part of attachment G and the documents following that. But to speak to the assignment for a board order today, that brings, feedback from the Charter Review Committee. There are many elements of the Charter Review Committee's suggestions that are created in this attachment G, an alternate proposal for you. And then in time for the November 5th general election. So that is, again, why we're here today, as this is the last board meeting before the due date to do such. So in quick summary, again, many options. There could be movement forward with the May 23rd harangue long proposal with no changes. Move forward with the revised charter amendment, attachment G, that incorporates Charter Review Committee input. Direct that the Charter Review Committee continue their work towards either a future charter amendment and or any subsequent lane code and draft bylaws for the board's consideration. Could direct that the matter be brought back before the board in a future time for additional comment or discussion, or, as you know, simply take no action. And again, many other options and in front of you today, but I just wanted to put that back out there, and I will turn it back over to you, Chair, for any deliberation questions. We are here for that.
Thank you. Thank you to all of the staff, all of the volunteers from the committee, some of whom are here, to our staff, county council, to our interim office of county council. So much went into this, to our clerk, to the LCOG minutes taker, to Metro for rearranging their schedule so that the meetings could be taped and broadcast. so much went into those 8 hours of meetings, plus I can't imagine how much time, Chair, you spent outside of those meetings preparing these reports, communicating with staff. Just an incredible amount of effort. And so I'm going to preface our conversation by just saying I think we all agree that we are so appreciative that everybody rallied and worked so hard to deliver what, in my opinion, are some really ripe seeds for us to plant and grow some really good work out of if we choose to go certain directions with what is in front of us. Thank you to Ms. Williams for talking about sort of those broader options. I'm going to remind the board just procedurally our options. I think it would be helpful to have just a little bit of discussion to get a sense of where folks are in response to the staff presentation. And then a reminder that we have an order in front of us that should someone, after a little bit of discussion, feel that motion has some legs and makes, or that order has some legs, wants to make a motion, it needs to receive a second. If it does, then we open up discussion specifically to the motion. And then there would be a vote, but there are options outside of acting on the order in front of us. But I think first I'd like to open us up for a round or two of just general discussion in response to the presentation, and also an opportunity to ask some questions before or if we get to having specific discussion to a specific motion. So, to the board, feedback, general thoughts, questions for staff or our committee chair or Office of County Counsel. Vice Chair.
The silence was killing me. I'm going to jump into the pool here. Thank you very much, Chair. It was great. Like I said, we're going to echo your praises and accolades of the committee. I mean, they pulled the plug on their normal lives and jumped right in. You only asked for 2 meetings and you went for 4. I mean, that's like, Duplantis hitting 20 feet 6 inches on the pole vault. You guys just hit the bar really high. And so I certainly appreciate that. And Morgan, I can't thank you enough for directing stellar work. So that aside, what the board, rather Citizens Review Committee came back with suggestions I think are stellar suggestions, and there's some of them there I really like. The question I do have for you is your first point. I felt it was a little clickbaity, if I can use that word, hyphenated, when you said that the integrity and security of the elections are at stake here. I just want to know a little more explanation on why you might think that in my opinion, writing something that is wrong is a hack of integrity and security against our elections, just because it may seem like it's a little stressful to get it done in time. I mean, I remember when I was in sports, when my coach would look at me, he'd say, you can spend 90% of your time trying to make something 1% better and miss the mark entirely. So that's why I asked that question.
Sure. So I want to be careful that I'm mostly going to refer to the memo of July 25th from the Office of the County Clerk, right? And so I think she can certainly speak for herself. She presented to the committee, and it was very informative. And I think that kind of a question was something that people wanted to understand. And so when I used the term, the integrity of the elections, I was quoting directly from her memo. So that's directly from the county clerk's memo to our committee that's in your packet. And she really laid out the scale of the work that is coming next year. So much of the work that the county clerk does is also related to the initiatives and the effort that the Oregon Secretary of State is doing. And so when the elections division for our state looks at when are we going to do bigger projects, how are they going to lay out the workflow, and they look at, huge timeframes. I'm going to be careful. My impression was that the state is looking at those timeframes with the expectation that this place between the census, because we do them every 10 years, is a space where they're not going to be doing redistricting, but also is where they put some really big efforts. And so there are some significant efforts coming through that our county elections department is going to be working on over the next 18 months that are coming sort of directly from the Oregon Department of Elections and with the Oregon Secretary of State. And so what the county clerk walked us through was all of the pieces that they're going to be doing. We're also doing some sort of pilot in our county because they do such a good job of county elections. And so she was really talking about the massive scale of work that that office has. And let's see here. It is not as laid out in this moment. Judy, could you?
It is just for anybody following along too. It's page 17 of the packet as it's linked online, and she does actually have a timeline charted out about about the impacts of enacting this on her office, not of the totality of the work you're referencing, but just because it's a large packet. It starts on page 17.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioner Lovell. If I could just expand ever so briefly, I think it's important to state when we have a redistricting effort, currently we initiate that, county council does that, county administration helps out. And I think just that general reminder, we asked the clerk to respond to the Haranglong proposal in which it outlines that the clerk would be doing and initiating this effort of that, which, she kind of walked through every timeline of which starting in December of this year, trying to lay out all of those processes. I think in summary, noting if it was truly the direction of the clerk's role to do that, she felt like she could do that more easily in the 2030 timeframe and staff up appropriately. But I think with a huge software upgrade, with the staffing that they have, I think that's where she was speaking to the integrity of trying to respond to the very specific deadlines that were laid out in the Haranglong memo.
And I will say in the previous redistricting process, while the clerk didn't have the role that's laid out in the initial Haranglong proposal, somebody from the clerk's office was at every meeting, almost every meeting. And so even without increasing the role from the previous effort, that was a significant amount of time from that department of the county to participate in the work. And so that would be sort of all of that timeline of doing the work, and that doesn't even speak to the work that happens after the districts are drawn and the map is approved. Because then they have to go through and redo all the precincts, they redo everything, and we have I learned about precinct splits, where we have folks where maybe it's one voter precinct, but part of it is one fire district, part of it is one water board, part of it is one school district, part of it is one other piece. And so just the variety of precinct splits, so that's ballot formats. We have hundreds? We have a significant number of ballot formats to make sure that my ballot reflects everything that I get to vote on and your ballot reflects everything you get to vote on. And just the scale of the work that goes into that, I think, is the heart of what they were talking about.
Yeah, thank you. I think the poignant part of my question was how your statement was branded and how the public could perceive that. I didn't want the public to perceive that the scope of work that this is going to require. Yeah, it's a big scope of work. It's a heavy lift. We do have staff to do that. We've also heard from the proposals from the Charter Review Committee that the county clerk does not need to burden that all on herself. So there's a way of spreading that load out that I think the public needs to know. But I think just the perception of saying the integrity and security just hit me wrong as a brand, because it makes an accusation that some of us who support this are trying to undermine the integrity or security of elections, which is wholly false. So I wanted to make sure that that was very clear for the public. This is not about integrity and security. It's about workload. And I think we can handle it as a county. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I will remind the board, we do have 2 other staff items, and we have already done some significant shuffling of our staff's time, and we have about an hour of business still to conduct. We've allowed an hour for this item, and we're halfway through that time. Commissioner Suniga.
Yeah, this is a quick question for both Judy and Ms. Monroe. So is that kind of where the unanimous decision on number 3 came from, to help with the recommends that the role of the county clerk as described in the Gary Long proposal be largely confined to supporting the redistricting committee. Is that all part of the same workload the county clerk was speaking of?
I think it's partially, but I wouldn't say all of. I think the question, and I think Judy touched on this, which is what is current practice with how work is done in the county? County administration does a lot of the pieces that are in the proposal, the original proposal. And so whether it was, for example, Judy staffed the previous redistricting effort. And so it was all a question of sort of who has the responsibility for that right now, and to not create extra responsibilities for people. That was a big piece of council's recommendations as we looked at the court's role, right? So the court's role in the original proposal would essentially create new authority and responsibility for our local court that we don't actually necessarily have authority to do. So I think it's that question of whose job is it was something that we came back to, as well as workflow, but more whose job is it, because who knows what the county clerk will be staffed to do in 20 years. It still didn't seem like it was their job.
Briefly, Chair Trieger and Commissioner Senegud, we are also trying to match it to other similar sections in the charter or lane code where it does, trying to go at that higher level where possible, where of course if the board wanted to delegate it in a different direction later on, if we keep it at that higher level, we have that flexibility.
Kind of makes sense. Thank you.
Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I also will echo my huge thanks to all the efforts of the committee members and yourself as chair. Thank you very much. I'm actually quite surprised that you were able to make the time that you were able to make when everybody works full-time. It was a big task, and it's clear from your presentation that you're ready and willing to continue working on this issue. I think you made some specific points that really hit me. First of all is how we set the committee up for success, rather than simply reviewing a particular proposal, but to set you up for success in reviewing and maybe putting together what an independent redistricting committee charter amendment would be if you were to have done that from scratch. And you were able to do some of that work in the initial charter time that you had. But I'm very curious about what you and the committee thinks would be a way in which we could set you up for success to move forward and think about what a charter amendment versus bylaws versus code would truly be. And I personally would be in favor of ensuring that you were given the time and the resources to do that kind of work. I don't think that what we've got here today is clear enough, and definitely needs more committee time. And the fact that you as a committee are telling us, hey, we need more time to flesh this out is a significant statement to us. In addition to wanting to know how you all feel would be setting you up for success, I just wanted to also point out this is kind of a subsection of the proposal specifically, but the point that you made that a truly random pool of applicants is not what Lane County can statistically actually provide is really important from an equity point of view. If we're not being able to include a true randomization of an applicant pool, then we're not doing it right. We're not truly going to be getting people who reflect the totality of the community in the pool of applicants to choose from. And honestly, that's equity work that we do all the time on a lot of different levels, but it would be specific to this particular committee. And so I would be very curious what your committee would come up with as to how to actually honor, from an equity point of view, a fully representative pool of applicants. And I think only that work can be done if we allow you the space and time to come together and fully flesh out a fully run concept from charter to bylaws to code. Because I think if we just do one without the other, we're not truly thinking through the entire process. There's got to be links in all three of those in order to make the process actually operate efficiently, up to legal snuff, when the time comes at the next census redistricting. So and these are questions that I'm not sure that you can answer today. Clearly, I agree with the fact that there are significant issues in redistricting mid-cycle. It was brought up earlier that, and I watched the section of the Charter Review Committee's work when our clerk, Dina Dawson, spoke to you. And it was really significant and impactful, what she stated. The fact that we do not have the staffing and resources to actually implement a proposal like this, and the workload that has really been thrust upon counties in many ways by the state right now. The combined impact of that absolutely compromises the integrity and security of our elections departments in Lane County. I don't know that I would have been as impacted by that statement if I had not watched that particular segment from our clerk. And I would recommend that our clerk come and speak to us about what that actually means. I'm not sure everybody had a chance to actually watch that particular section. And I didn't watch all your work. That was a lot. You did a lot. But I happened to watch that one. And that poses a much larger risk to our community, and is a ripple effect of rushing through concepts without fully fleshing out the ideas. Thank you, Chair. If you have a response, that's great.
Our committee talked a little bit about those things what would a charter amendment look like? What would the Lane Code adjustments look like? And then what might bylaws look like? We wished we'd had time to do that. There was a sort of an envelope math in the meeting trying to figure out, like, okay, what would it take to get that so that y'all could have it and see it? And it just was an impossible task. And so that's something that we would be interested in and stand ready to do. I also want to say that our committee is only seated through October. And so this is we have certainly been immersed in this. And also there may be a different group or the same group or however you want to do it. But just thinking about time, that may be something to look at. And that's in all y'all's hands. So,
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Commissioner Trigger. You've already called for the fact that we only have 20 more minutes on this item. And I wonder, Commissioner Trigger, Chair Trigger, you've been a commissioner, this is your third year in a row that you've been a commission officer. This is a pretty weighty issue. How did this only get 1 hour on our agenda? There's no way to talk through this in 1 hour of agenda time. And I'm really curious about why this has only gotten 1 hour. And we're talking about some more or less esoteric items as opposed to what it is that we're really here to talk about, and that is, are we going to put something on the November ballot? We have before us a board order. It's board order 24080606, very specific. And we can make a motion to pass that order right now, to debate that order, amend it, pass it, whatever it may be. But we only have 20 minutes to debate that because we have, among others, Director Ray sitting in the audience waiting for an item, and Commissioner Buck and I have a Homes for Good meeting at noon today, you know, so things are very constrained. And I'm shocked, amazed, and appalled somewhat that we only have this short amount of time to discuss what is a very weighty item. We're talking about, are we going to put something on the November ballot? My answer is yes. We have to find a way to put something on the November ballot. And how are we going to do that in the next 20 minutes? Well, we need to precipitate a decision on that right now. There's an order that's been written before us. It's 24080606. It's very specific. It has a ballot title, and some of the details of the actual amendment aren't fleshed out in the order. But the order gives staff instructions to move forward. And a part of the discussion, you know, I was at the commission meeting, the committee meetings last week, and the discussion was to remove the load of work from county clerk and put it with the county in general. I think that was unanimous, and I think we've done quite a bit to alleviate what may be a large workload on the staff of the county clerk. But we don't need to talk about that. Are we going to put something on the November ballot or not? We have now 17 minutes to decide. So one thing that we can do is we can place the order in terms of a motion, discuss the order, pass it or fail it, and then have staff move forward with actually preparing a charter amendment to put on the ballot. Or we can just say, well, it's been a big waste of time. Let's wait until 2030 to do anything else. I'm not in favor of the latter. So back to you, Chair.
Commissioner Seniga.
Well, I have a motion here. I move to approve Order 24-08-06-06 with revisions based on the feedback from legal counsel and the Charter Review Committee, using all the revisions outlined by Attachment C from Miller Nash and items 3, 4, and 5 from the Charter Review Committee be provided to the county clerk for the November 5th, 2024 ballot.
Second that.
Been moved and seconded, and I'm sorry, Commissioner Seniga, was that something you wrote up, or is that in our packet? Because I'm just looking at the agenda.
Nope, this is something I wrote up.
Chair?
Yes.
I just want to make a quick point. It was brought to my attention there are a couple of very minor grammatical errors in the draft measure. A missing period, an extra 4. So I just bring that to the board's attention that if this order should be passed, that there be a caveat that staff is empowered to make those small grammatical corrections.
Thank you, Counsel.
I've not heard this then. I need to hear that again.
Yeah, same.
I move to approve Order 24-08-06-06 with the revisions based on the feedback from legal counsel and the Charter Review Committee, using all the revisions outlined by Attachment C from Miller Nash and items 3, 4, and 5 from the Charter Review Committee be provided to the county clerk for the November 5th, 2024 ballot.
Commissioner Buck.
What are items 3, 4, and 5?
Page 25, top of the page.
From the unanimous decisions from the
What page are
Charter
we?
Review Committee.
25 of the board packet, top of the page, under attachment E.
And so 3, 4, and 5?
So I read 3 earlier to Ms. Monroe, and then there's 4 and 5. The committee recommends that the legal analysis of county counsel and Miller Nash be followed and incorporated as presented to the committee in a memo. Would you like me to read 5?
Excuse me just one second. Sorry, maybe this helps. Is the calling out of those items necessary, or are they encapsulated within the order as it's written? That's a question for county counsel, if you can answer that.
I apologize. I was reading a few.
Yeah, sure. Are you following along that attachment E, the county Charter Review Committee's summary report is attachment E, and the committee identified 3 high-level areas of unanimous agreement, is what Commissioner Seneca is inserting language in the motion affirming agreement with those, but are those 3 items not already reflected in the order that's before us? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yes, all 5 of those, Chair, are reflected in the proposal that was, or the draft measure that was drafted by Mr. Condit.
So it's a redundancy to have those be part of the motion. That's why I'm trying to understand if you're proposing something that isn't already embedded in the materials of the order that's been presented to us, and it sounds like that's...
Well, but I don't want 1 and 2 in the revisions.
I see.
So when
I see. So actually what you're trying to say is you want to move this motion and you want to add back in a mid-decennial redistricting effort, and you want to change the district definitions. Is that correct?
No, what I'm saying is I want to use all the revisions outlined by attachment C, Miller Nash, and the items 3, 4, and 5 from the Charter Review Committee. It's the same thing.
I still have the same question, like what is being added back?
Items 1 and 2.
Which is exactly what the chair just mentioned.
Right, which is the exact same thing I said, but in a different way.
And I do have a further question. In the board order itself, in the attachment at the end, it's at the very end of the whole thing, there is a board order and then a sheet right past it, the very last page. Is that the actual attached board order? Because it just says ballot. Is there more to the board order than just that last page?
That last page, what you're referencing is the ballot title. That's the language that would be required to go to the county clerk to actually be included on the ballot. That is currently reflects the measure language of attachment G. Should there be any revision to what's in attachment G, then likely the ballot title language would also need to be revised to be accurate and accurately reflect what is actually being proposed, the actual amendment being proposed.
Just as a response to that, we don't have a board order that is fully reflective of the motion on the table, is that right?
Not if I understand Commissioner Senega's motion that would include things that have been, let me say it this way. So the proposed amendment reflects the recommendations of the Charter Review Committee, all 5 of those that are listed there. So if anything were to change, if the order of the board is to adopt something other than those 5 recommendations from the Charter Review Committee, that is not reflected in the current board order and the ballot language. That would have to, both of those would have to be adjusted or revised.
And if I may, the board order as presented also reflects changes beyond 3, 4, and 5. So I lifted in the unanimous just the pieces but other pieces didn't rise to that level. So other changes are reflected between the original and what you see today that are beyond 3, 4, and 5. And I just want to highlight that.
Commissioner Bach.
I would like to propose an amendment to the motion, which is to include all items of attachment E 1 through 5, the unanimous agreement items from the committee.
So if I could, that is the order that's before us.
No.
Right?
Nope. The order that's before us includes only items 3, 4, and 5.
But the order before us disincludes 1 and by definition. The order before us reflects the totality of that, right?
I agree, but the motion on the floor modifies the board order.
Right. And the motion on the floor implies an addition back in
Yes, it would be a move to approve the order with revisions.
So I think it would be important to hear those revisions. That's what the, so you're asking for a vote? I think procedurally, I'm just going to put us on pause for a minute. Staff and our committee members did an incredible effort to bring back exactly what this board asked for, what the majority of this board asked for, which was a board order that reflects the Harangue Long proposal and the suggestions of the board and uses a legal review, and that's the order before us. So I think, Commissioner, I'm just going to ask if you want an order different from this one, the helpful thing would be to state what it is you want the order to include. Because I just think this is getting messier than necessary, because there's just not being an explicit goal being stated here. Commissioner Farr has stated an explicit, clear goal of wanting something on this November's ballot. I echo his sentiments about rushing through things, only from a different perspective. And just a reminder, we are down next week, so we would not have an opportunity to actually see finalized order language and have any opportunity for public comment, let alone any sort of public hearing on something we're considering putting before voters. This is an awful lot of complex and nuanced language to be drafting on the fly. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Trigger. You know, I don't see it as being that complex. I think Commissioner Seneca, your order is essential. Your motion essentially is the order that's put before us, with the deletion of number 1 and 2 from the Charter Review Committee summary report. Is that correct?
Correct.
And inherent in that is the summary by Miller Nash, which we all accept as an appropriate legal summary. So the only difference is that 1 and 2 are removed from the order that's in front of us, which doesn't seem that complicated to me. Items 1 and 2, and the items 1 and 2, for anyone listening, is the committee recommends the commissioners do not initiate, which means that this order would have a mid-cycle redistricting in 2025, or it would have the option of a mid-cycle redistricting effort in 2025. And then the committee recommends that the commissioners do not move forward with a proposal to amend commissioner districts, district definitions. And so, am I saying that correctly, Commissioner Seneca? That's the only changes you're making, is that you're dropping those 2.
Correct. It is with motion B was our option, and those were the revisions.
Yeah, okay. Doesn't seem that complicated to me.
Commissioner Buck.
I would like to modify a motion to amend the current motion on the floor, which is to incorporate item 1 of attachment E and to delete a mid-cycle redistricting effort.
I made my motion as is. Thank you.
I guess my question is to that motion and to Commissioner Farr's comments, those items are part of a committee report, not an order. So I'm trying to understand, and maybe this is a question for legal counsel again, were this motion to pass, what would we be actually approving or not approving, depending on whether it passed? That's different from what's before us.
So I think potentially the body of the proposed order itself, and my gears are turning as I'm speaking here, so bear with me, commissioners, would generally capture what's been proposed or the variations that have been proposed. What I think is the more important or more clear-cut hurdle is the ballot language that's attached to the proposed order. That needs to, by law, clearly reflect what would be being referred to the voters. And the changes that Commissioner Senega's proposing are significant and would need to be reflected in that ballot title language. So that itself would definitely need revision before the board could adopt it and forward it to the county clerk.
Commissioner Farr.
So a question on that. The revision would only involve a statement that it would not preclude a mid-cycle redistricting. I mean, that's the...
I guess depending on the particulars of what the board adopts, because of course it could either not preclude a 2025 redistricting or it could require a 2025 redistricting, which the Harangue Long proposal, if that were to be plugged back in, that would require a 2025 redistricting. It also, because of the word limitations on the ballot title, for example, in the larger summary, that's limited to 175 words. We're right there. And so it would take basically a large revision of this language in order to include things. We'd have to also remove language in order to stay within that 175 word limit.
Okay. Well, I'm going to just state my intent and my feeling on this. I believe we do need to redistrict before 2030. And the reason that we do is because the districts that we have do not accurately reflect an impartial redistricting. Currently, we have 5 commissioners, can be from the city of Eugene. In the next election, we could turn out with 5 commissioners from the city of Eugene. And, you know, I just don't, there are elements of it that just weren't right. So I am and have been for every statement that I've made in favor of redistricting before the next election. Not before the last election, which I was in, but before the next election, which I'm not in. So I would like to see that happen. I know that there are people in this audience who don't want to see that happen, but what the important part of this is that the element of democracy. I would like to see redistricting happen. I'm only one person. I would like for the people of Lane County to have a weigh in on whether or not we should redistrict before the next election. If they say no, so be it. If they say yes, well then they agree with me on it, that there should be a redistricting. So that's what I want to move forward with is a item on the November ballot that includes the mention of redistricting in mid-cycle. 2025 is the case. So that's what I want to move forward with. So how do we get there with the order that we have and with the ballot title that we have?
Depending on timing, as Chair Trieger referenced, this would be the last opportunity for the board to meet prior to deadlines to get anything on the ballot for November. Mm-hmm. I don't have in front of me today's agenda. I'm not sure what the afternoon looks like. I know you have an executive session, I believe at 3 as well. Other than that, I'm not sure. But what it would require, and I'm not sure if we have the time to do it, is to take back whatever the board wants, what the board chooses to this morning, take that back and attempt to revise all this material to bring it back if there's potentially time this afternoon with additional or revised language in a board order and ballot title language.
And I respect your ability to do the work, Council. And I also understand there are only so many seconds in a minute, so many minutes in an hour, and so many hours in a day. But we have until the end of this day to make whatever small adjustments need to be made in the ballot title for the board to take a look at it one last time and say, yes, put that one through to the November ballot. Am I correct in that?
Well, I'll tell you that, of course, if the board chooses, if the board directs staff to do that, we will make every effort to do so.
Okay.
And it's hard for me to say, again, without knowing when the board would ask us to come back with that for a vote and what time the board would need to discuss any new proposed board order. But that staff would work very diligently to make whatever the board wants happen.
Bring it back by, say, 4:15 this afternoon.
If that's what the board asks for.
Said. Okay, well, further discussion from the board. Go ahead.
Commissioner Beck.
Thank you, Chair. I think the move to amend this board order and exclude items 1 and 2 from the committee is a purely bias and political move to gerrymander the districts. If we were to change the board order before the end of the day, I think this gives virtually no notice to the public to read the material. There's no public hearing, no public input as to what the language does or does not say today. I would not and cannot vote for this motion. It is actually a detriment to our community to put something forth without any public hearing and without them even being able to read it until perhaps 4:15 today, in which I'm not actually able to be here at that time. This is fundamentally a real affront to democracy in Lane County and a way in which to disenfranchise voters, confuse them as to what the issues are, and really not provide the actual transparency needed in order to change a very substantial document on how we run our county. I am not in favor. Thank you, Chair.
I see Commissioner Farr wants to speak. I'm gonna say something before I call on Commissioner Farr, so we don't, to try to diffuse a bit of a back and forth between two commissioners for a moment. And I want to acknowledge and appreciate staff's always saying, if the board directs us, we will do our best. But I really want to caution this board against essentially directing staff to turn the sky green, for example. Staff does an incredible job, and we need to respect their professionalism, their time, their workload. The more we pile on about something like this, the less they're able to attend to the other important work that they're trying to do. And I worry about this board at times teetering on the edge of, for lack of a better word, abusing staff's recognition of its obligation to support the will of the board. We need to use our authority judiciously and respectfully, and I worry we're veering, already have, and certainly with this work that we're potentially about to ask of them, veering dangerously on the border of not doing good governance here. I'm also wanting to say that it's been stated very clearly, explicitly and implicitly by the two commissioners to my right that they think we need to redistrict. So that's clear, that's on the table. Let's just be honest and not dance around. That's what the majority of this board wants to do. What's really disappointing to me is I was really hoping that out of all of this that has happened in the last few weeks, we could actually regroup and point back in the right direction, because what is clearly something all five of us agree to is that we could be doing better with the process of how we do redistricting, of what a committee looks like, how we seat it, what their work is, and what the product of that work is. And we have a real opportunity to do that. We lose that opportunity if we push through and insist something happen this November. And the only justification for that timing insistence is to impact a specific election. And our job, and as the chair of this committee continues to say, is to produce something that will stand the test of time. So if we're reacting to a decision that was made a couple of years ago in order to potentially influence the outcome of one particular election, we are not doing that. That is not good governance. So I was really hoping where this would lead is for another 5-0 vote to move this work forward, to take this incredible work product that our committee, our charter review, not a redistricting committee, our charter review committee brought to us, to develop a really, truly good, supported, integrous, transparent redistricting process. But it seems so far that it is not the will of this board to do that. but rather to go toe-to-toe with something they don't like, with something some other people don't like. And that's really unfortunate.
Chair.
Commissioner, yes.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, Commissioner. Just before, if the board moves forward with the vote on this motion, I also want to note that we'll need some clarification on which, in terms of the description of the districts. There's been a couple of proposals offered to the board, one from the Charter Review Committee, one from the Harangue Long letter. It's unclear. We could use some clarification on what's actually being forwarded in this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. I will apologize. That was not directly to the motion, my statement. So to make it to the motion, I will not be supporting this motion for those reasons. Commissioner Farr.
And I'm glad for that apology, Chair Trigger, because I was going to make mention of that. You know, we end up talking about things that are peripheral to the discussion that we're having. And sometimes personal differences are what we end up talking about. And really what we're trying to do is what's right for the people that we serve, not exercise our personal differences. Commissioner Buck, I could agree with you really on just about everything that you said. If this were an order that were absolute, what this is put something on the ballot, which is the ultimate democratic process. It doesn't say this is it. It says now you get to choose. It puts it on the ballot. That's what we're doing, is we're putting it on the ballot for the people of Lane County to choose. And at that point, we have between now and whenever the election is, whenever the ballots are distributed, for the pros and the cons to discuss it in multiple public hearings. So if anybody in this room disagrees with me that the ballot is the ultimate way to test democracy, raise your hand, and I disagree with you on that.
Commissioner Seneca.
Yeah, a couple things. Mr. Thiel, thank you. I listened to the Charter Review Committee. Actually, I was in that meeting. And I would like to support their language that says generally comprised of. I believe that was what the Charter Review Committee came up with.
It's what the current charter has, I believe.
Yes. So, and then Chair Trigger, to this motion, I agree. We can do better, and I think this is all part of that process, having 3 amazing attorneys and a room with the Charter Review Committee going over just this, and this is what we came up with. It's great. Our one disagreement, or small disagreements on districts, is whether we should use this amazing proposal that's come up or not in 25. And if we've gone through this much work and we've done it, it's here. Let's start with it. I think I agree with you. It is great work, and I'm proud to have it in front of me.
Commissioner Farr.
Just strive to simplify the motion just a little bit then. So the only difference from the actual motion is that item number 1, which precludes redistricting in 2025, is removed. That the charter remains the same as far as the description of the districts. So the only difference is item 1 is removed, which allows for a 2025, that's the only difference, is allowing for a 2025 redistricting. It's the board order intact as is, but allowing for a 2025 redistricting. Does that simplify things for you, Council?
If that's what, I want to make sure that that's what Commissioner Senega's motion was. Again, so that the proposal from the Charter Review Committee also included numbers, adding numbers for the district description. So the districts themselves would be numbers, not numbered, not just the positions. That uses the word general. The current language also includes the word general. So if I could get some clarification, Commissioner Senega, on if it's to keep the current language as is or to adopt the Charter Review Committee's proposal for descriptions of districts.
So in one of the many pages of this amendment we went through, entirely was struck out and generally was put in, and that's what entirely versus generally was the language I thought you were talking about. Are we on the same page there, pun intended?
So are you requesting that the additional terms such as Roosevelt Boulevard and the Willamette River and the urban growth boundary be retained as in the Harangue Long proposal? Or are you recommend, so you're not recommending we leave the definitions, you're recommending to accept the version with the additional descriptions for the districts, but removing entirely and replacing it with generally?
Correct, yes. Generally, like North Eugene to Roosevelt, generally comprised of.
Well, I think, I'll call on Commissioner Buck in just a moment. I want to wait for, I think council, if we can give them clarification, what might be in order is asking them to do their best to bring us back an amended version. My concern now is time this afternoon. We do have time before. We have a brief item at 1:30 and then an executive session at 3. Commissioner Buck has already indicated a lack of availability after 4. Mine is tenuous. I'd need to, because this agenda was published and noticed, with the last item of business being a 3 p.m. Executive session estimated at 45 minutes. So I don't think it's reasonable to expect staff to bring something back to us before the 3 o'clock executive session, but I'm not sure we will be able to have a meeting with all 5 commissioners after that, and that seems to only compound the issues before us. Apparently, Commissioner Farr doesn't seem concerned that we don't have all 5 commissioners participating in this vote.
No, I think all of our calendars state that we're here till 4:30 today. Blocked out from 9 a.m. till 4:30.
The published agenda states a 3 p.m. executive session estimated at 45 minutes as our final item of business today. Commissioner Buck.
Question. I'm actually not clear what the motion is now because I think the original motion is now being amended to change, but not formally. Has not yet formally been amended from the motion on the table regarding the names of the commissioner districts to revert back to what the Bill Gary letter stated. And if that is a motion that comes before us to amend that back, I just want to make it very clear that including that language in the charter is going to disenfranchise Democratic voters in Lane County in a very serious way. That kind of language should not be written in a charter anyway. That is not where it should lie. We had a discussion earlier about what should be in bylaws, what should be in code, what should be in charter. That kind of language is going to get the county in legal trouble. And I would highly recommend that that motion not be made. Secondly, when it comes to schedules for the day, our agenda was clearly laid out well in advance. And I have a childcare issue with coming back later in the day. It's out of my control. And that is just not the way that we should really be conducting our work on the board and not consider what we have already put on our agenda for the day. This is extraordinary motions that are happening today that just shouldn't be happening. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Farr.
Well, then I'll offer an amendment to the motion. The amendment would be to not delete item 2, so to only delete item 1 from the areas of unanimous agreement.
Yes, I'll second the amendment.
So you'll agree to that as the maker of the motion,
As the maker of the motion, I agree to the amendment. Thank you.
which you have to have agreement from the second also.
Yes, I'll agree. Second, yes.
So the motion then is simplified just to delete item 1 from the area of unanimous agreement. So the net effect of that is that they potentially would be, or in the charter amendment, there would be a 2025 redistricting.
I would draw commissioners and anyone following along's attention back to page 17 of the packet, in which the clerk lays out the challenges in a redistricting mid-cycle and mid-decennial, because that's what you're proposing, that's the part that stays in, that we redistrict in advance of, that we redistrict in such a way as to potentially influence the outcome of the 2026 election specifically. That's the intention behind this. Otherwise,
You're misstating the words. To influence the outcome, I think, is to change the districts, or to potentially change the districts, or not to redistrict.
I'd like a point of order.
Vice Chair?
Yeah, a point of order. I'd recommend that we don't put personal feelings and influences and inference words into this discussion. The discussion is about the motion, and the motion is now down to where we are not including item number 1 on the 5 items that the Citizens Review Committee recommended. I think it's pretty simple. I think the feelings about how or what elections are influenced, and speaking to the motion, the elections are already influenced as they are. As been stated repeatedly, 5 county commissioners can come out of the city of Eugene. This is not about redistricting for advantage. This is about playing what's fair. The purpose of the redistricting committee was threefold, and it was to eliminate the county commissioners from picking the voters who vote for them. It was eliminating the bad actors, and it was bringing integrity and neutrality back to the system. And this is what this motion does, and this is what we're trying to attempt to do. So I'm not quite sure why we're stalling, but I think we should move along.
Well, Vice Chair, all due respect, the way to do that is to ask this committee to continue working to bring us a good redistricting process. And perhaps I misunderstood, because there's been a lot going back and forth. Is the current accepted amendment to the motion to keep 1 in and take 2 out, or keep 2 in and take 1 out? Which is it, Commissioner Farr?
You keep 2 in and take 1 out.
And I misunderstood. Thank you, and my apologies to our administrator.
Yes, Chair Trieger, Commissioners, I think regardless of this vote, well, not regardless, if this were to pass, we would need time to sit back and really work through what the electoral language, what the ballot title and language would be. So we're considering this in 2 phases. The motion to move forward, depending on the outcome, we will need the hours to figure out the language.
Thank you. So if I'm understanding you, it would be helpful to call the question on a motion that is the order before us with the amendment of adding back in the commissioner district definitions as proposed in the Harangue Long proposal. If that motion passes, County Council would work to bring us back that amended motion for order for consideration this afternoon?
Correct.
The amendment needs to be voted on first.
I apologize that now I'm a bit backwards on it as well, as to what's been pulled and what's been included back in. My understanding, Commissioner Farr, and please, of course, correct me if I'm wrong here, was that the amendment to the motion was to add back into any proposed order the 2025 redistricting, but to leave out any revisions to district descriptions. Is that accurate, sir?
Thank you, Council. Yes, and it was a friendly amendment, which doesn't require a vote. It just requires a consent of the maker and the vice and the second.
Then again, in that case, I will just draw everyone's attention, but particularly Commissioner Farr, to the clerk's memo, page 17, in which she outlines the tremendous impracticalities and challenges and potential risks to attempting a mid-decennial redistricting, which in the meeting she stated to her mind, has never happened and is outside the bounds of what is considered a standard for elections. So you're asking that we do that, a mid-decennial redistricting. That is the against the advice of our clerk. Commissioner Senega.
Yes, and without the clerk here, it is tough to say, but if I recall, we did redistrict in 20 and 21, and that was able to go through.
That's actually not the timing that happened. There were COVID delays in the census data release, so what would have been 20 was bumped to 21 is what happened. In any event, there is a motion with a friendly amendment that has been accepted on the table to adopt the order as presented with the amendment of the addition of language that initiates a mid-cycle redistricting. Should that motion pass, our staff will endeavor to bring us back language that reflects that for reconsideration this afternoon. And the question then is going to be a matter of timing of when on our calendar this afternoon. So perhaps we should take the vote, and then staff can work in the interim and communicate back to commissioners about the timing.
Correct.
Thank you. Then I will call the question. The motion before us is to accept the order as written with the addition of amended language to add in a mid-cycle redistricting effort. Is that correct, Commissioner Senega? Does that reflect your motion?
Correct.
All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Nay. Motion carries 3-2 with Commissioners Buck and Trieger voting no. Thank you, staff. We will see you back at some time this afternoon, to be determined. We are going to jump back to Health and Human Services now on our agenda and welcome Eve Gray, our Director of Health and Human Services, to the table. We have two items. One was split out to allow Commissioner Buck recusal, but in the interest of Director Gray's time, I'm going to have her move to 7B so she can do her presentation on the contracts before us. This is Order 24-08-06-05 in the matter of approving contract actions with Whitebird Clinic, American Safety Council, doing business as Certus, ICCO, LLC, doing business as Best Med, Cascade Medical Associates, Shelter Care, Shelter Care Incorporated, Homes for Good, Cities of Eugene and Springfield, Peace Health Oregon Region, Oregon Criminal Justice Commission, Willamette Family, Inc., and one ratification with the City of Springfield, and delegating authority to the county administrator or their designee to sign the approved actions. Thank you so much for your patience. Welcome.
Thank you. I will be brief. So most of the contracts before you today are relatively routine items. The ones that I wanted to call out specifically were those associated with House Bill 4136, which passed in this last legislative session. This bill was sponsored by Representative Nathanson. It was in response to the University District Hospital closure in Eugene. The goals were to ease licensing for out-of-state nurses, stabilize EMS in Eugene area in particular, and then to fund innovations in order to decrease the unnecessary use of emergency services locally. The Innovation Fund came to us in the amount of $3.2 million in one-time funding, and again, that is intended to decrease the use of emergency services in Lane County. We convened a stakeholder team, which included our CCOs, both hospitals that have EDs in Springfield now. And also, we will add the grantees to that committee moving forward so that we will have a steering committee to monitor these proposals and the outcomes that are associated with them. We were fortunate to have CCO buy-in and support for this bill. They both, I believe, submitted testimony and support, and the goal is that long-term funding for these innovations if they are successful, would come from the CCOs. And success would be defined as reducing the use of emergency services at a reasonable cost so that we are increasing quality, having appropriate utilization of care, and decreasing overall cost to the system. We will be writing 2 reports to the legislature, for one that is just updating them this December. The next one, the following December of 25, which will give considerations for future policy proposals based on the outcomes of the work here. So the grantees that were recommended by the scoring committee include Best Med in an amount of $500,000 to expand urgent care hours until 10 p.m. at 2 of their locations. Cascade Medical, $500,000 to expand hours for telemedicine appointments until 2 a.m. City of Eugene and Peace Health have a partnership and received are recommended to receive a $1.3 million grant to deploy a basic life support unit to low acuity calls. So rather than sending the big fire engine and all the resources to low acuity calls, they would send a smaller unit, and that unit would have the ability to triage the person and make a recommendation that they access urgent care. The unit would also be able to transport the individual to urgent care rather than the emergency room if they agree to that intervention. Peace Health will also look at how things are going and consider putting a provider on the unit with the City of Eugene, but that piece is not completely worked out yet. Lane County Health and Human Services was recommended to receive $590,000 for our mobile medical unit to provide regular care and services at the Navigation Center, as well as Dusk to Dawn, both of which have increased utilization of emergency services with the population served there, and also open access for the West 11th Clinic. Our patients can get in for same-day appointments now at our West 11th Clinic. And then Whitebird was recommended to receive $396,000 for a 24/7 low-level stabilization center for mobile crisis, which currently is only Cahoots, but very soon, as you are very aware, will be Lane County Mobile Crisis, providing the mobile crisis services within the metro area of our community. So those are, I thought it prudent to just call out this particular process, since we were entrusted by the legislature to run a fair and impartial process with the innovation grant funds, and would be happy to entertain any questions if you have them.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I will just note, since you said this is in response to that House bill, appreciation for Representative Nathanson for all her work to bring a table together from so many different aspects of the care system and come up with this legislation, then work so hard to get it passed. And we'll just, in public, I know I told you this in an email, but Commissioner Buck and I met with Rep. Nathanson and some other members recently, and she was singing the praises of Lane County for our ability to be responsive and turn around these funding opportunities and make real impacts on improving health in the community. Full stop, but so quickly in particular. So thank you so much for that. To the board. Commissioner Farr.
Just, I'm speechless as to how much work you're able to do in such a short time frame with such high expectations. Just commendations to you and the staff that went into making this move forward as quickly as it has. I'm in disbelief in many ways at how much you've accomplished, Director Ray. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you all are aware, we love to show off how wonderful it is when the state sends funding locally, and we are making those funding decisions based on the needs of our community.
Run it up the flagpole, shine a light on it.
Yeah.
Good job.
Any other questions, comments, or a motion? We do have an order in front of us.
Chair, I'd like to move to approve contract actions per Board Order 24080605 with Whitebird Clinic, American Safety Council, DBA Certus, ICCO, LLC, DBA Best Med, Cascade Medical Associates, Shelter Care Inc., Homes for Good, City of Eugene, City of Springfield, Peace Health, Oregon Region, Oregon Criminal Justice Commission, Willamette Family Inc., and approving one ratification with the City of Springfield and delegating authority to the county administrator or their designee to sign the approved actions.
I'll second.
Been moved by Vice Chair and seconded by Commissioner Buck. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Approval of Order 24-08-06-05 as presented. Thank you so much, Director Gray. Appreciate your work on this and your patience in us getting, moving our agenda around this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have one other order under Health and Human Services. Commissioner Buck?
Thank you. Prompt. This order in front of us includes St. Vincent de Paul, Lane County, so I need to declare a conflict of interest. I am related to the Executive Director Emeritus of that organization, who is still employed with that organization, so I'm going to recuse myself from this particular vote. I'll step outside, and if somebody could let me in when you're all done. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Gray, if you want to give a brief overview, but I'll just note for the board, this would normally be on our consent calendar, and we pulled it as a standalone so that Commissioner Buck could recuse just from this one item. So if there's anything you want to say about it, otherwise I would just look for a motion.
Chair, I've got a motion. I move to approve one contract per board order 24080604 with St. Vincent de Paul and delegating authority to the county administrator to sign the agreement.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'd love to second that. And a quick question on the motion.
Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair Trigger. What is the amount of this contract?
I would have to go back to my notes and look.
Well, it's, I have the amount. It's rhetorical. There's I think 2.16 million or thereabouts. So it's a substantial contract with St. Vincent de Paul, and we love the work that St. Vincent de Paul just carries forward for Lane County. Not just Lane County, but for the cities that they serve within. So I just wanted to point out that St. Vincent de Paul is doing remarkable work with every ounce of asset that we're able to provide to them.
They are. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0 with Commissioner Buck excused.
Thank you.
Or recused, I should say. That moves us on to, back to county administration. Welcome back, Commissioner Buck. We are on item 8B, Order 24-08-06-07, in the matter of adopting Lane County Fiscal Year 24-25 to 28-29 Capital Improvement Plan. And we've got a whole slew of folks. I'm not sure who's coming to the table. I'll leave this to Christine Moody to introduce the panel and the presenters then.
Thank you, Chair Trieger, Commissioners. So we do have a few presenters here today. So if you want to go ahead and come up to the table if you're actually presenting, and I can move back once I do the first one here. So we have a PowerPoint that we will bring up. Take just a second here. See it on the desktop. All right. Is it up? It's up. Except we should see it up here, too.
I'll take advantage of this lull in welcoming Sasha Vartanian in her new role at the table. Thank you.
It doesn't look like we have anyone in the room. We have pictures that I would love to be able to show the board. We're trying to bring our capital projects a little more to life for you. So that's why we have a larger group here today to talk about the capital projects by category is the plan here. So here we go. All right, overview. So this is my slide, and then I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Stark in the budget office, and then we'll go through each of the project categories, and I'll go ahead and have them introduce themselves as they begin to go through the projects. But as an overview for you, this is the 7th consecutive county-wide capital improvement plan. So we continue to come to the board each year with a draft plan in December prior to starting the budget preparations. Then as we go through the budget process, kind of verify those project amounts, get more detailed amounts. What are we actually going to be doing for the next fiscal year? And then also planning out the 5 years. So you have many different committees that are involved in this that review the projects. So 162 projects in the CIP in front of you. 59 of those are what we refer to as standard projects, meaning that they have a process and funding identified and they're going forward. The rest of them are what we refer to as pre-planning. So meaning that we know about the need and we're working towards something, but either the planning or the funding process hasn't been finalized yet. So just a breakdown there for you on categories where the work is happening, facilities having the bulk, followed by roads. 131 million in capital investments over the next 5 years is what you see in this plan. And just to highlight how much we believe will happen in fiscal year 24-25, the year we've just started, is 72.5 million. So just over 55% of the plan itself. And I will turn it over to Michelle to go through a little bit more summary before we get into some projects.
Right, thank you, Christine. So the goals of the capital improvement plan are pretty straightforward. It helps us plan to maintain our capital assets countywide. It also helps us provide policymakers and the residents of Lane County with the ability to analyze planned projects. And it also enables us to better plan, prioritize, and make decisions about our capital investments. As Christine alluded to, there are 3 types of projects in this plan. There are the standard projects which have identified funding and completed their initial planning process. There are pre-planning projects that either don't have identified funding or have not completed the initial planning process. And there are community investment forms. Those projects are not owned by Lane County, but receive some sort of Lane County monetary contribution. And the threshold for inclusion into the CIP is $50,000. We have several project categories, including facilities, which includes our buildings and our parking lots. We have fleet, which is the entire fleet system. Parks, that includes our campgrounds, our jetty, our covered bridges. We have roads and bridges. We also have technology. That includes our phones, our server, and our radio systems. And waste management, which includes the landfill, transfer stations, and the resource recovery facility. And there are 162 projects, as Christine mentioned. 59 are standard projects, 97 are pre-planning, and 6 are community investment. Here's an overview that gives you a sense of the projects over the next 5 years that are on our standard forms. The bulk of them are in roads, followed by solid waste, facilities, and parks. If we wanted to take a look at each year of the CIP, we can see that years 1 and 2 are those years that we have identified the most capital improvements. And so year 1 is roughly $72.5 million worth of investments, and that's about 55% of the 5-year total. Year 2 is about $46.5 million, and that's roughly 35%. So 90% of those projects happening in year 1 and year 2. And these projects are funded by a variety of sources, and there is additional information about those sources on the forms themselves. Some of them receive funding through the Capital Improvement Fund, some of them Road Fund, General Fund. We also have user fees, state and federal grants, and other funds and revenue, as well as debt and bonds. The board order before you today does provide the county administrator with delegated authority for those road and bridges projects that have terms that are less than 10 years. But all other projects must still go before you for contract approval. Thanks so much for your feedback from back in December when we brought the draft to you all. You had mentioned that it would be nice to know more about the projects themselves. And so today we're welcoming a whole panel. These are really the departments that put all of this together. So for roads, we have Sasha. For parks, we have Brett and Steve. And for facilities, we have David and Matt. And I'll turn it over to them, and then we'll come back for some thoughts about future CIPs and for questions and feedback.
Thank you, Chair Trieger and Commissioners. Thanks for your time today. My name's Sasha Vartanian, and I'm the Division Manager for Engineering and Construction Services. One of our division's main responsibilities is to deliver capital projects on Lane County roads and bridges. As you can see from the previous slides, road projects make up a large portion of Lane County's CIP. Additionally, we work to maximize our limited road fund dollars allocated to capital projects by leveraging grants and other external funding. All three projects I'm going to highlight do this. First is a project that represents our bread and butter of what we do. The preservation and safety are our highest priorities when it comes to programming projects in our CIP. So the Lorraine Highway Overlay, the extent of it is just northeast of Macbeth Road all the way to Somerville Road. It specifically includes asphalt mill and fill pavement preservation and safety enhancements at the Spencer Creek intersection and adjusting super elevations at a couple of the curves where there's a history of fatal and severe crashes. This project relies on fund exchange dollars, which we get an allocation of federal dollars from the Surface Transportation Block Grant that is exchanged for state funds and also road funds. Next. The next two projects are in City of Springfield and Eugene, respectively. These are projects we're very excited to see going to construction and represent an important shift in how we prioritize projects for federal funding that comes to the Central Lane Metropolitan Planning Organization. Now, if we are going to select projects within the Eugene or Springfield urban growth boundaries, we are collaborating with our city partners to ensure that these projects lead to jurisdictional transfers. So Laura Street is an upgrade of the county portion of Laura Street, which essentially extends from the business park on Laura Street at the north end to Mauna Loma Estates, just north of the ODOT office. And we're upgrading to urban standards, which include sidewalk, curbs, stormwater treatment, and bike lanes. And we have an agreement with the City of Springfield that after completion of construction, this will be transferred to them. Gillum Road. So this project is going to construction, and it's a huge milestone for our team. Unfortunately, the Gillum Road project delivery was plagued by many of the setbacks you've heard discussed during the initial years of COVID. Significant staff turnover as well as rising construction costs. So we are finally at a milestone where we can confidently say this is going to construction next year. The project is really broken into two distinct segments. Along Gillum Road from Ayers to Ashbury is a urban upgrade where we're essentially infilling where there's not existing curb and sidewalk and stormwater with bike lanes. And then the second section from Ashbury Drive to Don Juan, the upgrade is focused on the west side, which includes sidewalks and bike lane on the west side. And we have a commitment from the City of Eugene for jurisdictional transfer. Once this is complete, we're finalizing that agreement. The agreement is in draft, and they've also committed to sharing a portion of system development charges to pay for a section of this project. And that's what I have for you today. Thank you.
Okay, hello again, Commissioners. My name is Brett Henry. I'm the Parks Division Manager here with the county. So with me today and presenting for the first time is Mr. Steve Rafuse. Steve hails from Anchorage, Alaska, where he was the superintendent, and he is the superintendent with Parks, with Lane County Parks. A couple of his skill sets are in planning and project management, so I figured this would be a good time for him to present a couple highlight projects that are made possible by the passage of the 5-year, $31 million local option levy. So whenever you're ready, Steve.
Thanks, Brett. Greetings. My name is Steve Rafuse. So I've been down here with Lane County for about 6 months. I joined the county right in the start of the ice storm, so that was a nice welcome. but I'm glad we got that cleaned up and start focusing on spending the $31 million and making improvements for all the folks who live in Lane County. Two projects we want to highlight today, two different locations. We're going to start with the coast in the North Jetty. So if you've been to that parking lot and have been out, it's one of the best access points for getting on the beach out at the coast in Florence, but if you've been there, your car certainly has reminded you that it needs work. And so we're going to actually be updating both of the parking lots out there at the dive lot, which provides nice little access to some more gentle water there, as well as the main parking lot. And so we'll be doing a full rebuild of the parking lot, as well as adding a fee station so that we can recuperate some revenue to help pay for some of these expenses and have more sustainable funding into the future. We'll also be adding new restrooms as well, so we'll put in a vault toilet out there. So providing a whole suite of visitor amenities to improve the experience out there as well. Next slide. So we're actually putting an RFP out to bring an engineering firm on, which should go out and essentially hit the streets, I think, on Friday. So we'll get going with that project. And the goal is actually with the North Jetty to start construction after next summer. So we'll get the busy summer season out on the coast, and by October, things will quiet down, and then hopefully we can start construction. Yes, Chair.
Thanks. I have a quick question. Are we doing that in phases, or will the parking lot be completely shut down while the project happens?
We'll have to decide when we get a consultant to see what we can do, and then the contractor will have to work that out. But that's why we are targeting to stay outside of the most busy time of year. Yeah.
That's when I go. That's why I want to know.
Is that right? Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'd also like to highlight as well some improvements we're doing at the Howard Buford Recreation Area, HBRA. So we have the three parking lots actually on the east side, and at the Arboretum, the main parking lot, and then at the North Trailhead. And in 2018, working with the roads department, we had upgraded the parking lot by providing gravel and a few paved ADA parking spaces. But what we've been seeing is increased numbers. Just looking back at the original master plan for the park from about '94, they estimated about 40,000 visitors. And what we're seeing with road counts and data that we can collect is we're close to 400, 500,000 visitors a year that are coming into that park. And so with that and having the opportunity to have these levy funds, we're hoping to do some investments, and we'll be doing some similar investments to the North Jetty. So we're looking at paving the entire parking lot. We'll be adding a fee station as well, and then we'll be adding vault restrooms there. Prior to that happening, we'll also be adding a security camera, and we just had security cameras come online about a month ago. Brett had been working hard on that project at the main parking lot, and the video quality has been excellent, and we're able to forward any sort of issues over to the Sheriff's Department. So we hope to have a similar timeline for that. Again, looking to probably next fall to actually move into construction after the more busy season at the park there. We are looking in the future as well to make upgrades to the main parking lot, but I think we want to space out construction at the park into some phases, because we don't want to, essentially we want to allow access into the park and not inconvenience all the visitors at once. We'll also be adding a new kiosk. We've been working with Sea Reach, which is a firm located here in Oregon, to design new kiosks and provide information for visitors at the park, and we hope to put those in actually in the next few months. And with that, I'll just pass it on. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. I wanted to highlight one project here, specific, the LED lighting upgrade project. This project represents work across 38 of our county buildings, and it'll be a significant effort here in the next several months to endeavor to reduce our energy costs across our entire building portfolio, which ultimately affects all of our departments, helping reduce operational expenses across all of our departments. This will be a single contract with contractor, ESCO contractor, Amoresco, for a total of $3.2 million. And we actually have had a kickoff meeting to start scheduling and planning which buildings of this total we're going to prioritize. So we've landed on a subset of buildings for this project, about a half dozen facilities. These and 5 of these represent about $130,000 of total savings, which is a little more than half of the total estimated annual savings year after year. So we decided to focus on these particular buildings because of their current cost, their calculated future cost, and the future costs will end up being between 50 and 60% savings on what we're currently paying each year on energy costs. So these buildings are the Lane County Adult Corrections, the Juvenile Justice Center, the Public Service Building, Behavioral Health, and the Charlton Clinic. And one of the buildings that we're going to consider moving forward as part of a more holistic effort is the courthouse. While we would realize about maybe $18,000 in an annual savings, we feel like this might be more suited to include in a more holistic project at the courthouse in conjunction with flooring and ceiling upgrades, which have also been on the CIP list. So we're trying to be more strategic on how we're going to do that project, not just replace these bulbs, remove ballasts, et cetera, in the courthouse, but consider how new lighting would complement a larger project there. The first year, one of the reasons why we wanted to strategically include all of these buildings in this project is because we'll receive up to $200,000 from our local utility and energy incentives, which is substantial given the overall cost. We currently have an annual guaranteed savings of $214,000 at the baseline rates that were established in 2022. So since our rates have increased over the last couple of years, we anticipate a greater savings, potentially up to about $225,000. This project will include relamping, removing existing ballasts and bulbs, and legally disposing and recycling of those components, replacing those with the new LED bulbs, and then we will receive certified records from our contractor for all of the materials that have been recycled and legally disposed of. And one of the things that we're also doing is trying to get smarter about the types of bulbs that we're going to use. New technology provides internal drivers in a lot of these bulbs, which allows us to remove ballast so that in the future, these bulbs can be replaced by our facilities techs and not have to use electricians to deal with the ballast. So that's also a reduced savings on the maintenance side moving forward for our department. So thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Matt Dapkus. I'm a project manager for the Capital Improvement Program here. And today I'd like to highlight the Public Service Building Generator Replacement Project. As the title of the project implies, this will completely replace the existing generator, the standby generator in the currently installed in the basement of the Public Service Building. This generator was installed with the 1976 construction of the Public Service Building, and so it has far surpassed its intended useful life. It does confirm the old statement that they don't build them like they used to. We've recently experienced some mechanical failures with the generator. It is currently operational, but it is not operational to full capacity. So we are able to utilize it in the event we need to run the data center or some of the critical infrastructure like the 911 dispatch center. But we really, it's time to replace it. The parts are obsolete. We would need to have custom machine parts in order to repair it. So it has come to the point where it needs to be replaced. It will be relocated. Right now it's currently in the basement. It will be relocated to the plaza with a sound-proof enclosure. The reason we're relocating it above the basement is due to potential flooding. It's in the basement. Even a foot of water in the street means the basement is inundated. And so we want to try to start thinking ahead of potential disasters that we might be able to mitigate by relocating critical pieces of equipment out of the basement. So that, as it states there, supports not just the 911 dispatch center, but also the data center, the multi-agency data center that we host here in the Public Service Building. It provides backup power for that data center as well as the entire downtown complex here for lighting and other emergency functions. So for the public service building, as well as the courthouse and Harris Hall, where we're sitting now. So the reason I wanted to highlight this was just because of those critical functions that it does provide. So thank you for taking the time to hear some of the details about what we have going on.
Well, thank you to our lovely panelists for coming and talking about these projects. We really wanted to help bring these projects to life. The CIP is a pretty dense document. It's well over 200 pages. And so, our aim and some of our future refinements really are geared towards highlighting the impacts of these projects, both for the residents of Lane County and also for our Lane County organization. What are these projects accomplishing? We also, in future iterations of the CIP, hope to call out the connections of these projects to our strategic plan and our equity strategic plan. So making sure that we're putting a spotlight on those connections. And lastly, finding a way to report on the progress we're making and on the outcomes of these projects. This document is a forward-facing snapshot in time. So it's based on the projections we see for the upcoming next 5 years. But you don't always hear about the projects that were completed or what progress we've made. So we aim to work that in future iterations of the CIP. And with that, we would welcome your feedback and questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the board. Questions, comments for staff? Commissioner Senega.
Yes, Steve Rafuse it was? Rafuse. Well, welcome aboard. Appreciate it. Just want to say how fitting. I come from Alaska right into the ice storm, but that's not that's not normal for us. Matt, I'm really excited about the generator replacement, and this is more of probably a question between you and David. So, is the generator going to have any more capacity as we use more and more power as things increase, or is the lighting savings we're going to have going to give us more capacity for emergency operations type stuff in here? How's that look?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have been, every project we do, we look to reduce energy consumption use and cost. So we are actually on a path to decrease the load in the building. So we are replacing it with an equal capacity generator at this point. It's basically a like for like. We don't see the need for a larger generator in the future.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering with the savings, if we will have a net savings if we go with the same size. Well, that was it. Great presentation. I appreciate it. Sorry, Brett, I normally get the most excited about parks updates, but you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Mr. Farr.
Understanding there are time constraints. Steve, welcome to Lane County and great work right immediately. I'm commending the work that's being done, particularly with the North Jetty Park. I am lamenting the loss of my grandchildren's favorite swimming pool right in the middle of that parking lot. But it's our parks work is tremendous. Many of us spend a lot of time. Commissioner Trieger just mentioned how much time she spends at Pisgah. I go to the other parks, and I'm going to take this one moment to call out an employee because there's a chance to do it, and that is True. Out at Richardson Park, we had an incident out there the other evening where there was a distinctly distraught individual who was having an event, and True, one of our maintenance workers, diffused the event tremendously. Today we had a discussion regarding mobile crisis. True himself proved to be actual mobile crisis on that day by giving blackberries and just water and really diffuse the situation. And I hope that True gets recognized for that kind of work. True's not the only person doing that, but that was a tremendous moment on the part of Lane County Parks. But welcome on board. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're with us. I'm glad you brought all the expertise from Alaska because some days we need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Commissioner Buck.
Thank you. Quick question on the lighting situation. Does that include the public service building and these lights? Because these are harsh.
It does.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Great. I know that we are not doing as much in the capital improvement department because we do have some financial barriers to us, and we're not getting as much done as we would have hoped. But I always look forward to, the the big plan that you give us all bound each year. And I do actually look through each of those pages because the amount of work that we're still getting done, even with maybe some of our budget woes this year, is pretty incredible. And appreciate your hard work. Thank you.
All right. Vice Chair.
I'm commenting on a motion, Chair, if that's all right.
Yep, please.
Yeah, that Flintstone generator, thank you. That was installed in the era where I picked beans for 3 cents a pound, so I realize that needs to be replaced. Steve, welcome to the show. Great to have you. And as always, Brett, I'm looking forward to those security cameras helping us out with our security at the parks. That's a really great addition. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve Order 24080607, adopting the Lane County fiscal year 24-25 to fiscal year 28-29 Lane County Capital Improvement Plan, and delegating authority to the county administrator to execute contracts for road and bridge projects with terms less than 10 years.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Vice Chair and seconded by Commissioner Buck. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you all very much for the presentation, for your work, and the work to come. Really excited to see the outcomes of these projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
That concludes, any announcements from county administration this morning before we break for lunch?
Just very quickly, as you know, significant fire activity continues in Lane County with several individual fires in the McKenzie, Willamette, and Row River valleys that were ignited in mid-July. Given the shortage of state and federal resources and the challenges of having so many start at the same time, we've seen federal consolidation of individual fires into complexes. We've been seeing the assignments for incident management teams grow. We now have several IMTs managing all the fires in Lane County, as well as the Pyramid Fire in Lynn. They're supporting the efforts of hundreds of firefighters on the ground in each location. Over the next 10 days, the incident will scale down into a single incident management team. They will be staffed out of the Lane County Event Center. Lane County continues to remain largely on standby at this point, with the principal effort being in the Sheriff's Office monitoring for changes of evacuation guidance. Our emergency manager, Tiffany Brown, has our EOC and our cooperators in a state of readiness should events require it. As of today, the EOC plans to settle into a weekly Wednesday cooperators call with situation reports issued throughout the week as updated information warrants. At this point, our team is attending community meetings, monitoring updates from all federal partners, and ensuring full readiness. We'll keep you updated.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our agenda for the morning. We have no need for executive session this morning. That will come this afternoon. And so at the sound of my gavel, we'll be in recess until we are back here for a 1:30 p.m. time certain with Public Works. We're adjourned until 1:30.